Chapter 10:23. The Troll Emperor was dead, and the parasitic demon had left. However, the black battle armor made of 36 leaves remained, floating in the sky. Reaching out, Yi Chun tried to grab the black battle armor. Swish! The black battle armor was full of spirituality as it drilled downward, trying to return to the fiend ancestral tree. It's not up to you. Yi Chun was not like other kings. Even if the leaves of the fiend ancestral tree had spirituality, it would be hard for them to get rid of him. His figure flickered and appeared in front of the black battle armor. With a grabbing motion, the black battle armor landed in his hand. Like a snake that had been grabbed by its weak spot, the black battle armor quieted down. The will in Yi Chun's hand had isolated its connection with the fiend ancestral tree. This is indeed a treasure. Arranging a layer of immortal sword intent on the black battle armor, Yi Chun threw it into his storage ring. Shwa! Turning into a beam of light, Yi Chun flew toward the true spirit continent. Above the ocean, the number of demon kings was still around 80. Facing 3 times the number of enemies, their losses were quite small, only a dozen or so. On the other hand, the losses of true spirit continent side were a bit bigger, also a dozen or so. Losing so many people while having far more people than the other side was indeed a bit dissatisfying. However, they couldn't be blamed for not risking their lives. Because of the black battle armor, the strength of these demon kings had skyrocketed. At the very least, their battle power had increased by 2 folds, and the most had increased by 3 to 4 folds. Being able to fight evenly was already not bad. When the difference in numbers wasn't too frightening, quality was more important than quantity. Your Elysium is going to lose this time. The essence, chi, and soul of Lord Troll Emperor have completely recovered. Adding the might of the demon's martial arts, it's enough to kill Yi Chun. On the side of the demon race, there was only one remaining 6-star demon king. His battle strength was originally at the peak of mid-6-star. However, after putting on the black battle armor, his strength reached the peak of 6-star. He could contend against Su Jing, Murong Qingcheng, and the brown-robed old man by himself. His strength was rather frightening. Of course, these 3 were not ordinary people. They had suppressed him to the point where he couldn't even retaliate. Dream on! Murong Qingcheng's fist technique was sinister and overbearing, exploding upon contact. Coupled with her unparalleled mobility, her opponent couldn't catch her trajectory at all and could only passively take a beating. The Troll Emperor is just a stepping stone for Junior Brother Yi. Su Jing's dragon body became dozens of meters long, and her dragon claws were indestructible. The opponent's protective magic was shattered by her dragon claws, unable to maintain its integrity. Just you wait and see. The Demon King snorted coldly. About half a cup of tea's time later, a streak of light flew over from the 3rd heaven, which couldn't close due to the battle between the undying tree and the abyssal ancestral tree. Who is it? The 4 of them looked over. Impossible. The 6-star devil's face was extremely pale. Just a moment ago, he was full of confidence, but now he was as dejected as a dead man. Who? Murong Qingcheng and Su Jing heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Although they were extremely confident in Yi Chun, this kind of confidence was almost blind. However, they were very clear about the Troll Emperor's strength. If Yi Chun wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but it wouldn't be easy either. Therefore, they could only completely sigh of relief now. What a terrifying young man. The old man in brown was amazed. He never thought that there would be such an amazing person in this era. Compared to him, most of the titled monarchs from ancient times would pale in comparison. The other demon kings also saw Yi Chun, but they didn't see Lord Troll Emperor. An intense uneasiness rose in their hearts, and they couldn't help but ask, Yi Chun, where is my Lord Troll Emperor? Floating in the air, Yi Chun looked down at the demon kings. The boundless starry sky will be his final resting place. Impossible. How could you kill Lord Troll Emperor? You must have tricked us and shaken off Lord Troll Emperor, then came to deceive us. Everyone, don't believe him. He wants to use this to attack us and make us lose our fighting spirit. Kill for me. Kill until the Troll Emperor returns. Some demon kings didn't believe Yi Chen's words and roared in anger. Truly foolish demons. Yi Chen shook his head, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Shua, his figure flashed, and Yi Chen flashed past a demon king. Fresh blood splashed 300 feet into the air. Whether you believe me or not, that's your business. I have no obligation to make you believe me. If you want to kill me, I'll accompany you. The 3 flowers above his head had already been dispersed by Yi Chen. Other than the Troll Emperor, no one was qualified to make him use the 3 flowers to borrow the Tao. Even so, his battle prowess was still as high as a 7-star. In the entire Elysium, there wasn't a second 7-star battle prowess. The sword light shuttled back and forth like threads, and demon kings fell one after another under Yi Chen's sword. Even if they had black battle armor and their strength had increased by several times, to Yi Chen, it was meaningless. Killing them was as easy as eating and drinking. 7-star against 6-star and 5-star. This wasn't just suppression, it was pure suppression. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the number of demon kings decreased from 80 to a dozen. Finally, they believed the truth that the Troll Emperor had fallen. To them, this was too cruel. All of them had lost their fighting spirit, and their eyes were lifeless. We'll go chase after those puppet warships. I'll leave them to you. Yi Chen said to everyone. Okay. The people of Elysium nodded. If they couldn't even deal with a dozen demon kings, they might as well find a block of tofu and kill themselves. Living would be a waste of heaven and earth energy. The ones chasing after the puppet warships were Yi Chen, Su Jing, and Murong Qingqing. They were the fastest. The demons only had about 300 puppet warships left. At this moment, they had already entered the starry sky and were flying toward a dead end. Their speed was so fast that not many could catch up. I'll go first. With a flap of her demonic wings, Murong Qingqing's speed soared, and in the blink of an eye, she had shaken off Yi Chen and Su Jing. That's not necessarily true. Su Jing had already turned into a human, but after hearing Murong Qingqing's words, she once again turned into a golden dragon. With a wave of her dragon tail, countless energy storms erupted in the starry sky, and even a small star was destroyed. As for Su Jing herself, she had already turned into a majestic golden storm and chased after Murong Qingqing. Now that he was the only one left, Yi Chen smiled bitterly. All right, let's see how fast I am. After entering the 3rd layer of life and death realm, Yi Chen's sword domain had already broken through to the 4th layer. At this moment, with the sword domain of the 4th layer fully activated, Yi Chen's speed soared. The huge sword domain seemed to have turned into an invisible propeller, continuously shortening the distance between him and the 2 in front of him. Murong Qingqing and Su Jing looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen smiled, don't look down on me. No matter how fast the puppet warships were, they couldn't be faster than the 3 of them. Most importantly, they needed to reach a certain speed before they could use space stones to travel through the starry sky. Soon, the 3 caught up to the puppet warships. The puppet warships seemed to have a soul power isolating array arranged with soul stones. Murong Qingqing and Su Jing's soul attacks couldn't kill the demons inside. Moreover, Yi Chen didn't have much soul power left, so he didn't use any soul attacks. However, this didn't matter. Flying to the center of the puppet warships, Yi Chen expanded his sword domain to the limit. The enormous sword pressure acted on the puppet warships, slowing them down until they finally stopped. Bang, bang, bang. The demons inside the puppet warships were still unwilling to give up. One light beam after another bombarded Yi Chen. Unfortunately, it was futile. Yi Chen casually swung his sword once or twice to deflect all the light beams. With Yi Chen holding the puppet warships in place, Su Jing and Murong Qingqing forcibly opened the doors and killed all the demons inside. Let's go back. Turning around, Yi Chen flew in the direction of True Spirit Continent. The 300 puppet warships bound to his sword domain didn't leave his side. On the ocean gazing, the situation was completely one-sided. It wasn't that Elysium's army was too powerful, surpassing the demon army, but that life and death kings had joined the fray. Life and Death Kings slaughtering the demons was as easy as chopping melons and vegetables. There was no suspense at all, especially Dugaju. With a swing of his blade, the sky full of demons turned into a rain of blood. His hatred for the demons had almost reached the pinnacle. After scanning with his soul power, Yi Chun let out a sigh of relief. None of the people he valued in Fallen Dust Sword sect had died. However, this was within his expectations. After all, his sword in Ten Jin Yuan was incomparably powerful, enough to let them face any enemy. That demonic sword. There is a forbidden area in the ocean gazing, the place where Demon Emperor and the Demon Curse sword had fallen. Anyone who approached this area would immediately die for no reason. Even ordinary life and Death Kings couldn't bear it. Disregarding the powerful curse power, Yi Chun arrived beside the Demon Cursed sword and grabbed it. Buzz! An extremely cold and gloomy power flowed through the sword and entered Yi Chun's body. Activating the seventh step Immortal Sword Intent, the cold and gloomy power was instantly shattered. This sword's quality is the same as my demon slaughtering sword, only a high-grade sword. However, there's a bloodstain on it. Yi Chun's sword forging arts had already reached an extremely profound level. He could tell with a single glance that there was nothing special about the Demon Curse sword. The only thing special about it was that there was a bloodstain on the sword's body. This bloodstain was extremely ancient and had been imprinted on the sword's body. It contained a curse power, turning the sword's source power into curse power. If Yi Chun couldn't contend against this curse power, his Jun Yuan would also turn into Curse Jun Yuan and suffer calamity. I wonder if I can disassemble this sword. Yi Chun wasn't interested in the Demon Curse sword. What he was interested in was the materials used to forge it. Putting away the Demon Curse sword, Yi Chun was about to destroy the demon-cursed Demon Emperor's body. Yi Chun, there are demonic energy stones inside the demon-cursed Demon Emperor's bones. They're useful to me, Morong Qingcheng suddenly said. Yi Chun frowned. If I'm not mistaken, his demonic energy stones are cursed. Don't worry. My dark demoness bloodline has a certain immunity to curse power, Murong Qingcheng explained. All right. Yi Chun faintly nodded. The demon-cursed Demon Emperor was a seventh-layer life and death Demon Emperor. His demonic energy stones were extraordinary. After absorbing its essence, Murong Qingcheng's demonic body would at least advance by one rank. Chapter 1024. The cursed Demon Emperor's appearance was too ugly. Even though he was dead, he still looked very disgusting. No one would look down on normal ugliness. After all, some things were innate. However, the cursed Demon Emperor's ugliness had been modified. In the entire Elysium, it would be impossible to find a human that was 1/10 as ugly as him. If one could be found, it would definitely be a miracle. Murong Qingcheng wasn't a woman who judged people by their appearance, but she didn't want to look at the cursed Demon Emperor for too long. Her exquisite fist shook the cursed Demon Emperor's body. Bang! The cursed Demon Emperor's body exploded and turned into ashes. With a gust of wind, the ashes dissipated, leaving behind a dozen black magical energy crystals. These magical energy crystals were different from the magical energy crystals obtained in the dimensional battlefield. The energy they contained was very terrifying, and there was a faint black halo on their surface. Master, you and I each get half. Murong Qingcheng pushed her hand forward, and half of the magical energy crystals flew in front of the Demon Flower Emperor. The Demon Flower Emperor shook his head and pushed the magical energy crystals back. He said, "It will help you more than it will help me. Moreover, I have also collected some magical energy crystals." The Demon Flower Emperor stretched out his right hand and opened it. There were 8 black magical energy crystals in his palm. These magical energy crystals were obtained from the skeletons of some demon kings that hadn't reached the blood rebirth realm. Unfortunately, most of the demon kings have been smashed to pieces, so there couldn't be any magical energy crystals left. We've suffered heavy casualties in this battle. The one who spoke was the Spirit Pill King. The reason he was able to survive was mostly due to luck, and a small part was due to medicinal pills. Of course, He had also given many medicinal pills to the other kings, and their effects couldn't be underestimated. For example, some medicinal pills that could replenish chi and blood, some medicinal pills that could increase strength, and some medicinal pills that could increase defense. These are all very useful. Yi Chun said, "This victory was the result of everyone working together. Although they are dead, their spirits are still there. I suggest that we build a king's graveyard. Only the kings that died for Elysium can be buried in the king's graveyard, so that the future generations will remember their contributions." This suggestion isn't bad. Shinho nodded. Yeah, I agree as well. I don't think anyone would disagree. Thinking about the people who had died, everyone's hearts sank. There were too many of them. Out of the 600 life and death realm warriors, only 200 were left. The underground race had joined later, but they had also lost 20 of them. Among them, some were already old, and some were just at the beginning of their lives. For example, Lu Xiaoyu, Bai Minghui, Xiao Hozuan, and the other martial geniuses. Their deaths were a huge loss for Elysium. The dead are gone. The ones who survived should be even stronger. Yi Chen sighed. He glanced at Du Guju, Dantai Mingwei, Chu Zhongtian, Lu Wujian, Jiang Tian, Lan Sanmei, Yin Fengfeng, and the other martial geniuses who had survived. They were all martial geniuses of the same generation as him, and it was not easy for them to survive. As Yi Chen looked over, they looked over as well. There were all kinds of emotions in their eyes. Some were hidden sadness, some were reminiscing, and some were thinking. Right then, silence was better than words. Even Jiang Tian, who had some conflicts with Yi Chen, also looked over with a hint of apology in his eyes. After this battle, everyone had formed a friendship. This kind of friendship might not be that of friends, but it was definitely kind, just like a comrade in arms. It was not hard to imagine that for a long time in the future, Elysium would be very peaceful. Even if the treasures appeared, it would not make them kill each other. Enough people had died already, and they would rather give up on the treasures than waving their knives at their former comrade-in-arms. Although fighting was the source of human evolution, the battle had already been decided, and there were only a few tens of thousands of demon army warriors left. However, there was still one big mystery that had yet to be revealed, which was the battle between the Undying Tree and the Demon Ancestral Tree. It would not be an exaggeration to say that if the demonic Ancestor Tree won, all of their previous efforts would vanish like smoke in thin air. A single demonic Ancestor Tree could kill all of them. An 8th layer life and death battle strength was not something that could be defeated with numbers. After all, it had already surpassed 10-star battle strength. It will take a long time for a winner to be decided. We will not be of much use here, so we should go check out the Sky Sword Continent. Yi Chen said suddenly. Right, I almost forgot about it. Oh no, I actually forgot about this. Many people patted their heads, their faces full of vexation. Actually, they cannot be blamed for forgetting about it. It was mainly because the battle with the demons had been too intense, and they had only won after several twists and turns. During that time, they had thought that there was no hope, but Yi Chen had turned the tide several times. Now that the battle was coming to an end, their nerves had relaxed, and they were not willing to think about anything else. Naturally, they had also thrown the matter of the Sky Sword Continent to the back of their minds. There is no need for too many people to go. The demons have been eliminated by us, and the evil spirit race will not be able to make any big waves. This way, those who are willing to come can come, and those who are not can clean up the mess. It is not good for everyone to go. Yi Chen said. In the end, only 70 or 80 people went to the Sky Sword Continent. It was not that the others did not want to go, but they felt that there was no need to go. In the entire Elysium, apart from the Demon Ancestral Tree, which enemy could be Yi Chen's opponent? Moreover, those who went with Yi Chen were all peak experts. There was a huge teleportation array between the True Spirit Continent and the Sky Sword Continent. Through it, Yi Chen and the rest arrived at the Sky Sword Continent in a short while. The Sky Sword Continent was already on the verge of collapse. The army of Sea of Soul Realm and Astral Reaching Realm warriors had less than 100,000 left, and the kings were only left with 50. Defeated. We are really going to be defeated. Ancestors, I'm sorry, but we really can't stop them. But you can rest assured, even if there's only one soldier left, we will fight to the end. We will not retreat. If you want to occupy the Sky Sword Continent, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Not to mention the others. Even the Snow Sword King and the Star Sword King were ready to die. As for the 8 young demon lords, another one had died, and only the young Elephant Lord was left. They could not see any hope, nor could they see any turning point. The only thing left was their own obsession, and that was to kill as many evil spirits as possible. Yi-chun, it would be great if I could see how you fight before I die. Star Sword King couldn't help but think of Yi-chun. 4 sword artists, the Sword Tao was their life's pursuit, and the one walking in front was undoubtedly their guide. Yi-chun was the strongest sword artist at the same stage since ancient times. Star Sword King wanted to see how he faced his predicament. Die. The 4 evil kings joined hands and attacked Star Sword King. Star Sword Monarch smiled bitterly. This time, he couldn't block it anymore. However, it was impossible for him to die without any resistance. He mustered all of his Zhen Yuan and was ready to die. Rip! Right at this moment, an arc-like sword light pierced through the space and swept past the bodies of the 4 evil kings. With a puff, the 4 evil kings didn't even have the time to scream before turning into nothingness. Star Sword King, long time no see. A familiar voice reverberated in the sky. It's Sword King Yi-chun. Yi-chun is here. And Dugu Ju, Dantai Mingwe, Chu Zhongtian. Why are they all here? Don't tell me True Spirit Continent has fallen? Impossible. Didn't you see their expressions? That's the expression of True Spirit Continent falling? Don't tell me. The kings of Sky Sword Continent discussed spiritedly, their emotions surging. Soon after, an ecstatic expression appeared on their faces. Since True Spirit Continent hadn't fallen, and the other side had rushed over, didn't it mean that they had defeated the demons and were here to rescue them? Yi-chun. Star Sword King looked as if he had seen a ghost. Snow Sword King Gojoseon also looked over, his eyes filled with astonishment. Smiling, Yi-chun said to the people behind him, "You guys go and exterminate the evil spirit army. Leave this place to us." Yes. Of the 70 to 80 people who had followed, 50 went to help the Sky Sword Continent army. The remaining 20 were relatively stronger. Bang! 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 Without any hesitation, the 20 or so people led by Yi-chun charged toward the evil kings. In an instant, dozens of evil kings fell as if they were chopping vegetables. Yi-chun, True Spirit Continent? Star Sword King asked. Victory! Yi-chun killed batch after batch of evil kings and replied, Yi-chun, you're courting death. Emperor Inshur rushed over. He didn't know how the demons were defeated, but the Troll Emperor was definitely not killed by Yi-chun. He reckoned that some special reason had led to the demon's defeat. Let me end your life. Emperor Inshur's strength was very close to 7-star, and he seemed to be a bit stronger than the Lord of Fear. His hands slapped out repeatedly, and sinister palm winds swallowed the sky and corroded the sun, surging toward Yi-chun. Yi-chun, be careful. The few kings of the Sky Sword Continent who had just been saved by Yi-chun warned him. Not far away. Chu Zhongtian curled his lips. The one who should be careful should be Emperor Inshur. Facing Emperor Inshur, Yi-chun only slashed out once. Puff! In the next moment, Emperor Inshur died, and not even his bones were left. Everyone was shocked, including the evil spirit race. Someone as powerful as Emperor Inshur couldn't even block a single sword strike from Yi-chun. Were their eyes playing tricks on them? No. The remaining evil kings of the evil spirit race roared angrily. Unfortunately, what welcomed them was death. A casual strike from Su Jing's dragon body could annihilate a group of evil kings. Murong Qingsheng was like a flickering black speck of light. Every time a black speck of light appeared, it would be accompanied by the fall of an evil king. Dugu Ju's despair blade arts were invincible, and anyone who touched them would die. Soon, the number of evil kings of the evil spirit race went from 300 to 100, then less than 100, less than 50, and less than 30. The time it took to finish a cup of tea didn't even exceed 10 minutes. Victory! Everyone cheered wildly. From despair to victory, it was difficult for outsiders to understand the changes in their minds. At least, the true spirit continent still had Yi-chan to give them hope. Many thanks. The snow sword of Gojoseon said deeply to Yi-chan. There's no need to thank me. Everyone is fighting for Elysium. The demon-slaying sword returned to its sheath. The remaining evil kings of the evil spirit race were just 2 or 3 kittens. There was no need for him to make a move. Chapter 1025. With the death of numerous evil kings, the army of evil spirit race immediately became rootless duckweed. Although they looked like a sea of people, it was useless no matter how many they had. Without reaching life and death realm, they were all ants. Perhaps if they joined hands, they might be able to kill ordinary life and death kings, but they couldn't kill 4-star kings or 5-star kings, not to mention 6-star kings. Like harvesting rice, large swathes of evil spirits were instantly killed, and blood dyed the ground red. The so-called large swathes were thousands or even thousands of evil spirits. Who would have thought that true spirit continent could defeat the demons, who were several times more powerful than evil spirit race, and even come to save us? Didn't you see? Sword King Yi-chun is already inhumanly powerful. Even Emperor Inshur couldn't block a casual sword strike from him. Killing the other evil kings is simply reaping lives. After this battle, Yi-chun's Sword King title will be passed down through the ages. At that time, people will only know Sword King Yi-chun and not the ancient Sword King. In the eyes of the people of Sky Sword Continent, Yi-chun was already equivalent to an ancient titled monarch. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Yi-chun was still so young, only 36 years old. Compared to a life and death king's lifespan of 1,000 years, this age was nothing. No, as long as one walked out of Elysium, their lifespan would reach 100,000 years. Finally, all the evil spirits were killed. Above the killing sword domain, corpses and bones covered the ground, and blood flowed everywhere. In many places, the blood had converged, forming a shallow lake. Standing amidst the mountains of corpses and seas of blood, many participants were crying tears of joy, but even more were cheering. Without staying for long, Yi-chun and the rest teleported back to True Spirit Continent. The Undying Tree and the Demonic Ancestral Tree were still fighting. However, everyone could see that the Undying Tree had the absolute upper hand. After all, this was Elysium, the home ground of the Undying Tree. As an outsider, the Demonic Ancestral Tree would be somewhat suppressed. The Undying Tree brandished its vines, and every time it lashed out, it would leave a deep mark on the Demonic Ancestral Tree's trunk. This battle continued for 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, the Demonic Ancestral Tree exhausted its demonic energy and died. In Elysium, although it could convert the Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth into its own demonic energy, it required a process and could not be converted immediately. In these 7 days and 7 nights, the Undying Tree had injured the Demonic Ancestral Tree tens of millions of times, perhaps billions of times. Each time, it would take away some of its demonic energy, and in the end, no matter how much demonic energy the Demonic Ancestral Tree had, it would not be enough. Although the Demonic Ancestral Tree had died, its body had not been completely destroyed. If it stayed outside, there might be a chance for it to revive. The Undying Tree used its vines to wrap around the opponent and dragged it into the depths of the earth. In the end, both of them disappeared. At this point, the great calamity of the foreign races had come to an end. Elysium had once again defeated the foreign races. With the end of the great battle, there was naturally no need for people to stay in the ocean gazing. They brought the corpses of their relatives and friends, and those without corpses carried a handful of soil stained with their own blood. Each and every one of them had a sorrowful expression, filled with indescribable exhaustion. The Demon Flower Emperor was prepared to turn the ocean gazing into the new homeland of the demonic humans. If it were before, this would have been an impossible matter. The kings of True Spirit Continent would not sit and watch as demonic humans entered the continent in large numbers. But now, no one had any objections. In this great battle, the demonic humans had also contributed a lot. More than 70% of the demonic humans who had participated in the battle had died. So what if this small region of the ocean gazing was given to her? Nobody knew, but at least for a long time, the two races would be on friendly terms. Su Jing returned to the Dragon God Celestial Palace to clean up the mess. The palace had also lost a lot of people, and many of the upper echelons had perished. Su Jing needed to appoint new upper echelons to allow the palace to operate normally. Murong Qingsheng and her father returned to the Murong clan. After the great battle, Murong Jishui had agreed to the Demon Flower Emperor's invitation, willing to merge the Murong clan with the Demon Flower Emperor's demonic humans. However, this was a matter for the future. Right now, there were still many things to do. Once everything was settled, he would discuss this matter with his clansmen. For a moment, the entire Elysium had quieted down. Everyone needed to deal with the aftermath, especially the big sects, who needed to appoint their upper echelons. Yi Chen's fallen dust sword sect could be said to have suffered the least losses. Of the 5,000 people who had participated in the battle, there were still around 3,000 survivors. This was mainly due to the effect of the sword formations. Dozens of sword snake formations, 7 to 8 sword dragon formations, and 2 big Dipper 7 star sword formations had killed countless demons in their hands, which had greatly reduced the pressure on the other members of the fallen dust sword sect. Yi Chen didn't have any regrets in this battle. He had left a drop of sword intent Zhen Yuan in the souls of the people he valued. However, his friends and relatives would also have their friends and relatives. Although Yi Chen had a lot of soul power, he couldn't take care of everything. Every drop of sword intent Zhen Yuan consumed would take a long time to recover. During the great battle, if he couldn't maintain his perfect state, then he would be dead for sure. When battling with the Troll Emperor, which battle hadn't been filled with danger? After dealing with some matters as the sect leader, Yi Chen went into seclusion. He needed to recover his soul power. Killing the Troll Emperor had consumed 90% of his soul power, and he had only recovered less than 10%. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. It was almost the new year. Once the new year was over, Yi Chen would grow another year older, turning 37 years old. Snowflakes fluttered down, white and flawless, sparkling and translucent. On the dusk peak, the peak was covered with snow. Some small animals that liked winter came out to look for food or to play in the snow. Creak. The palace gate in the middle of the snow slowly opened, and Yi Chen, who was still wearing a thin blue robe, walked out. He took a deep breath, breathing in the air that belonged to winter. It's almost the new year, right? In the past few years, Yi Chen had always been celebrating the new year. Before this, he basically wasn't at home. He was either adventuring outside, or he couldn't return home. The achievements he had now were piled up by loneliness and solitude. No one could casually achieve success, and he was no exception. Those small animals didn't seem to be afraid of Yi Chen. When Yi Chen walked near them, they only glanced at him and continued playing, leaving a string of small paw prints on the snow. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind blew past, and a large amount of snow suddenly fell from the top of the mountain. This was a sign of an avalanche. The next moment, the snow swooped down like a white wave. It looked like the frolicking animals, and Yi Chen were about to be drowned by the snow. But the next moment, everything stopped. The dancing snowflakes froze in midair, and the tidal wave of snow froze on the slope. The wave tip was a beautiful arc. Neither too fast nor too slow, Yi Chen carried the small animals in his arms and walked toward the back. When he reached the snowy ground in front of the palace, everything returned to normal. The snowflakes continued to dance in the air, and the avalanche continued as usual. Muffled rumbling sounds could be heard, drowning everything there. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The small animals still didn't know what had happened. They only knew that they had inexplicably landed in the arms of the owner of the mountain. Rubbing their heads against Yi Chen's chest, they jumped down and surrounded Yi Chen. A faint smile appeared on Yi Chen's face. The 3 months of closed-door training had not only helped him recover his soul power, but it also allowed him to digest the comprehension he had gained during the Great Battle. For example, the Blood Rebirth Realm, the rank 5 Immortal Sword intent contained in each of his cells, and the mysteries of the 4th level of the Sword Domain. These were all things that he couldn't grasp in a short time. He needed to digest them and understand them himself. Just now, he didn't need to take out his sword, but he could still create the effect of space freezing, which was a big gain. This was the result of fusing the essence of sword moves with his sword aura. In other words, as long as he used his sword aura, he could make the space freeze. Those who weren't proficient in the profound of space and were weak wouldn't even be qualified for him to draw his sword. He could completely make the opponent freeze there, or leave calmly, or go and finish them off. It was very simple. Apart from that, he could already fuse his sword aura with his sword domain. In this way, the sword domain would have the effect of freezing space, and it was even more powerful than pure sword aura. During the ranking battles of the Life and Death Palace, he had used his sword domain to freeze the young, undying Demon Lord. Now that he had fused his sword aura with his sword domain, it was many times more powerful than before. The essence of sword moves had fused with his sword aura, and the sword aura had fused with his sword domain. Naturally, Yi Chen's momentary brilliance had also improved tremendously. Every time he used his sword, everything within 1,000 zhang would be within its effective range. The power of his sword moves had also doubled. Without using the 3 flowers borrowing the way, Yi Chen's pure battle strength had already reached the peak of 7-star. If the Troll Emperor were to come back to life, Yi Chen was 90% sure that he could kill him with his real strength, instead of using soul attacks to destroy his soul. Of course, since he had improved so much, the others wouldn't be too far behind. The calamity of the foreign races was a disaster, but it was also an opportunity. As long as they could survive, they would definitely improve. Those who had exhausted their potential might break through their limits and reach a higher level. Another half a month passed, and it was the new year. This year's new year was even livelier and more joyous than usual. This was because everyone knew that this new year was not easy to come by. It was exchanged with blood, so there was no reason not to cherish it. Sometimes, living was a kind of happiness. Living an ordinary life might be a better happiness. At least, they didn't need to care about other things and could just live their own lives. After the new year, the atmosphere of Elysium changed. Of course, this kind of atmosphere only spread among life and death kings. They already knew that after the new year, Yi Chen would go to the path of death. Before that, he would probably go to a certain place. Emperor's Scar Steel. Chapter 10:26. Sky Martial Region, Emperor Canyon. This was a holy land, as well as a forbidden area. Since ancient times, those who thought themselves to be unparalleled had entered, but the majority of them had left dejectedly. Being unparalleled in the current era also depended on the era. Not every era's unparalleled expert could leave their mark on the Emperor's Scar Steel. Many people speculated that one had to have at least 7-star battle strength to leave a mark. As for whether it was true or not, no one had tested it yet. This was because in the current era, apart from Yi Chen, no one else had reached 7-star battle strength. After the new year, many kings had been waiting here. They had received news that Yi Chen would leave his mark on the Emperor's Scar Steel either today or tomorrow. If he did not leave his mark, he might not be able to return for a short period of time. Once the demons and evil spirit race knew that their army had suffered a great defeat and that there was a character like Yi Chen, they would definitely dispatch even more powerful kings to guard the death path. At that time, it would be easy for Yi Chen to leave, but difficult for him to enter. They're here. They're really here. In the afternoon, under the blazing sun, 3 figures flew over. They were precisely Su Jing, Murong Qingsheng, and Yi Chen. Junior brother Yi, today is the day your name will be passed down through the ages. Su Jing looked at the dozens of kings guarding the canyon and turned her head to speak to Yi Chen. Yi Chen said, "If I go through the death path, I don't know if I'll be able to return for a short period of time. I've done what I should do, and it can be considered as fulfilling a part of my wish." Leaving a mark didn't mean that Yi Chun valued this honor. He was merely imitating the ancients. If he didn't leave a mark, he would be looking down on the ancients. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The five landed near the Emperor's scar steel. I wonder if this Yi Chun can leave a mark. He should be able to. According to the Emperor's scroll, the majority of titled monarchs were not as strong as Yi Chun. There's no reason why they could leave a mark while Yi Chun couldn't. Among the many kings, a white-haired king held a book in his left hand and a pen in his right. On the cover of the book were 3 large words, Imperial Book. Speaking of the Emperor Book, many people knew about it. This was a book used to record the deeds of those who could leave marks on the Emperor's scar steel. This was just a copy. The true Emperor Book could not be carried around. This was the second time Yi Chun had come to Emperor Canyon and arrived in front of Emperor Scar Steel. The last time he came, he was only at Sea of Soul Realm. Even approaching Emperor Scar Steel was difficult. But now, if he wanted to, he could completely touch the steel. Standing several miles away, Yi Chun looked up at the tall Emperor Scar Steel with a calm expression. Only his blue clothes fluttered in the wind from the Emperor Scar Steel's Emperor Chi and various wills. Clang! Unsheathing the demon-slaughtering sword, Yi Chun's figure flickered as he stabbed at the empty space below the last mark. That mark was left by Yuan Emperor. Space became still, and Emperor Chi stagnated. The crimson demon slaughtering sword's tip erupted with a resplendent red light. This red light, with the sword tip as the center, erupted unceasingly. But strangely, no matter how fierce the eruption was, it was only the size of a fist, as if all of its might was restrained within. Rip! Sword Chi wreaked havoc in the empty space below Yuan Emperor's scar, shooting out in a spiral pattern. Yi Chun's sword tip pierced through it. Success! The white-haired old man's hand slightly trembled. Although he had long since known that with Yi Chun's strength, he would definitely be able to leave a mark on the Emperor's scar steel, he was still a little uncertain. Drifting back, Yi Chun returned to his original position. Everyone looked up and saw that the mark of a sword flower had appeared at the bottom of the Emperor's scar steel. This sword flower was only the size of a bowl, but the sword intended emitted was exceptionally sharp. Facing this sword flower, one would feel as if their soul was being pierced. Apart from this, the aura emitted by this sword flower gave off a feeling of space becoming still. Unknowingly, one would be immersed within it, unable to extricate themselves. This was the essence of instant glory. Next, it's the path of death. Yi Chun had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Senior Fire Emperor had failed in the path of death and passed away beneath the mountain behind the Eternal Sky sect. Senior Dragon King had entered the path of death, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Entering the path of death had already become a knot in the heart of Elysium. Every generation's unparalleled character would enter the path of death, but those who succeeded were few and far between. Although some people could pass through the path of death even without unparalleled strength, they had to rely on heaven-defying luck. Not everyone had heaven-defying luck. That year, the 37-year-old Sword King, Yi Chun left a sword flower mark on the Emperor's scar steel. After Yuan Emperor, he was the first person to leave a mark. On this day, Yi Chun left behind a living legend in the Emperor's scar steel. Near the path of death, almost all the life and death kings were present. Different from the Emperor's scar steel, they could look at it at any time. On the other hand, entering the path of death could only be done once. Apart from those who had entered the path of death, nobody knew how many experts were guarding the path of death. Nobody knew whether one could enter again after passing through the path of death. Everything was unknown. Therefore, this might be the last time they would see Yi Chun for a very long time. Of course, they hoped that Yi Chun could clear the path of death and kill all the experts guarding the path of death. This way, they would all be able to leave. Unfortunately, this didn't seem too realistic. Yi Chun, you must succeed, Chu Zhongtian said loudly. I will. Standing at the forefront, Yi Chun turned around with a faint smile on his face. Behind him, the pitch-black path of death was like a passage leading to hell. It seemed as if it wanted to devour people, emitting a frightening, killing intent. I believe in you, Just like how I believe that you won't die so easily at the hands of the Troll Emperor. Dugu crossed his arms, his white hair dazzling. Many thanks for your trust. I believe that I, Yi Chun, will not stop at the path of death. Sucking in a deep breath, Yi Chun's gaze swept through the crowd. Xian Ho, Demon Flower Emperor, Jailer, Su King, Air Emperor, Spirit Pill King, Dugu, Dantai Mingwe, Chu Zhongtian, Snow Sword Go Josian, Star Sword King, Lan Sanmei, and finally, Su Jing and Murong Qingcheng. With an apologetic expression, Yi Chun said, I'm sorry. This time, I have to leave alone again. Don't worry, Go. There's still a lot of time in the future. We've only been here for a few decades, Su Jing said. Murong Qingcheng also nodded. If we don't leave now, when the demons and evil spirits react, they will definitely send even more powerful experts to guard the path of death. At that time, who knows when we'll be able to leave? Yi Chun, when you go out, you must be careful. I don't know what the outside world is like, but it's definitely more dangerous. Murong Qingcheng reminded Yi Chun. I know that. Yi Chun continued. I promise you, even if there's only a sliver of a chance, I will do my best to kill the foreign experts guarding the path of death. After killing the foreign experts guarding the path of death would be completely clear in a short period of time. Everyone would be able to enter and exit freely. However, this was undoubtedly very difficult. Senior Fire Emperor had entered the path of death and couldn't withstand the first wave of attacks. He was seriously injured and died of depression. Therefore, the people inside had no idea how many foreign experts were guarding the path of death. Perhaps, the one who dealt with Senior Fire Emperor was only the weakest of them. Yi Chun, there's no time to lose. Let's act quickly. The one who spoke was Su Anho. When the foreign race's calamity ended, she had advised Yi Chun to immediately enter the path of death, afraid that things would change. However, Yi Chun didn't want to leave so early and decided to wait until after the new year. Now that more than 3 months had passed, the people outside had probably already found out about the things inside. There were more variables. That's right, it's time to leave. Everyone, I'll leave Elysium to you. Goodbye. After saying goodbye, Yi Chun didn't waste any time. His figure flashed, and he rushed into the path of death. Yi Chun, goodbye. Murong Qingcheng waved her hand as she muttered. To the side, Su Jing sighed. She and Yi Chun, in the end, were only in a close relationship. They hadn't reached the point where they could express their feelings. However, she wasn't anxious. Their lives had just begun, and there would be a day when they would meet again. Looking at the blue-clothed youth disappearing from their sight, everyone's mood was somewhat strange. This unprecedented genius had really left. He was like a mystery. In the first 15 years of his life, he was unknown, just a stupid aristocratic family's disciple. On the day he turned 15, he started to rise, growing step by step, walking towards the peak. In the past 20 years, he had never been defeated among his peers. Now, he had even left his mark on the Emperor's Scar steel, keeping pace with the ancients. For the first 15 years of his life, no one knew of him, and likewise, no one knew of his future. He was like a bright shooting star in the true spirit world, streaking across everyone's hearts and blossoming with his most breathtaking radiance. At this moment, everyone felt like they were in a dream. Yi Chun, Dugu said in a low voice. His expression was a bit lonely, but soon his expression became resolute. Wasn't it just a dead end? One day, he would use his own strength to charge through the dead end. Even if he was at the ends of the earth, he would still follow him. In this life, even if he couldn't create his own legend, he would still witness the birth of a legend. In this life, I probably won't be able to surpass him. Every time, he is always ahead. But this is also good. It saves me the trouble of losing motivation. Chu Zhongtian smiled and rubbed his nose. The dead end was nothing but primal chaos. There was no light, no darkness, no sound. It was a true void. After flying for an unknown amount of time, a wisp of light suddenly appeared in front of them. It was a wisp of dreamy, starry skylight. Almost out, Yi Chun's eyes squinted. Who dares to charge into the dead end? Scram! Bang! two shadows appeared in front of them. They were two demons. Their cultivation bases were at the 5th layer of life and death realm, which was equivalent to 7-star battle strength. Yi-Chun coldly snorted and took out his demon slayer sword, waving it horizontally and vertically. Immediately, a cross-shaped green sword screen shot out. The next moment, the two demons' bodies were torn apart, turning into blood mist. Yi-Chun's current battle strength was at the peak of 7-star. However, his control over his power allowed him to contend with a 7-star tyrant. And this was the result without using the 3 flowers borrowing path. Chapter 10:27. The Dead End was very special. Although there was no light or darkness, it could magnify any light that entered it infinitely. Inside Elysium, everyone could see the flickering light in the dead end. Without any surprise, Yi-Chun had already started fighting with the warriors guarding the dead end. However, the light only flickered for a second before it stopped abruptly, as if the battle had already ended. So nervous, even more nervous than going through the dead end. A lot of people had sweat dripping down their foreheads. As life and death realm warriors, they could already control their secretion. Sweating was something that would never happen to them. However, right now, because they were too nervous, they had the same reaction as ordinary people. Unfortunately, up until now, no one has been able to find a Savage Stone. If we had one, we would be able to go to the Desolate Star. With Yi-Chun's comprehensive ability, his profound would definitely increase drastically, and his strength might even increase by several folds. At that time, killing all the warriors guarding the dead end would not be a problem. We could also go out for a while and increase our lifespan to 100,000 years. The Savage Stone was the key to enter the Desolate Star. Without this key, no one would be able to enter the Desolate Star. Before the Great Calamity, everyone's biggest hope was to enter the Desolate Star and increase their strength before the calamity. But, without exception, everyone had failed, including Yi-Chun. The reason why Yi-Chun was going through the dead end now, instead of waiting for the Savage Stone to enter the Desolate Star, was because he was afraid that the situation might change. It was just like Xianhou had advised Yi-Chun to go through the dead end immediately. Once the demons and evil spirit race realized what was going on, they would definitely send even more powerful warriors to guard the dead end. Not to mention the 7th sky of life and death realm. Even a slightly more powerful 6th sky of life and death realm warrior will be able to make Yi-Chun return and defeat. You have to succeed. Murong Qingsheng and Su Jing prayed inwardly. The blood mist evaporated, but Yi-Chun's speed didn't decrease. Like a sharp sword light, he instantly passed through the dead end. In front of him was an even more vast starry sky. Before he had seen the starry sky here, he had thought that there was no difference between the starry sky of true spirit world and the starry sky outside. At most, there was a difference in size. But now he didn't think so. The starry sky inside true spirit world seemed natural, but it gave off a lifeless feeling, as if it was artificially created. On the other hand, the starry sky outside seemed even more abstruse and dreamy, brimming with endless possibilities. A single glance was enough to make one dazzled. This is the true starry sky. Yi-Chun could sense that deep within him, a shackle had been broken. As that shackle was broken, Yi-Chun's aura began to emanate an aura of deathlessness. This sort of deathlessness was not brought about by the immortal sword will, but rather the explosive increase in longevity. That was because his current longevity had reached 100,000 years, and he was very close to deathlessness. Only by being alive can one have infinite possibilities. The longer one lives, the more possibilities one has. Holding the demon slaughtering sword in his hand, Yi-Chun looked at the 7 foreign race experts surrounding him. They were all at the 5th sky of life and death realm. 3 of them were from the evil spirit race, and the other 4 were demons. Among them, their auras varied in strength. The weakest was at the late stage of the 5th sky of life and death realm, while the strongest was at the peak of the 5th sky. Amazing! You're the first person to walk out of the dead end in the last 15,000 years. Yi-Chun's speed of killing the 2 demon kings was too fast. They simply didn't have the time to stop him and could only bide their time outside, waiting for him to come out. Those two demon kings should be the weakest among you guys, right? Among the fifth sky of life and death realm, there were also strong and weak ones. The weakest ones had the battle strength of an ordinary 7-star, while the strong ones had the battle strength of a 7-star overlord. And this was still based on normal standards. For example, Yichun was only at the peak of the third sky of life and death realm, but he already had the battle strength of a peak 7-star overlord. If he went all out, even a 7-star overlord would not be his opponent. According to your Elysium, Imo Luo and Suo Jie should have the battle strength of a mid 7-star. But I didn't expect you to be able to kill them in an instant. They already knew about the defeat of the demons and evil spirit race. While they were shocked, they didn't forget to send the news back. Unfortunately, the distance was too far, and it would take some time to send the news back. Originally, when they saw that Yi Chun didn't immediately rush into the dead end, they were a bit happy. After all, they didn't have absolute confidence in stopping Yi Chun. But they didn't expect that 3 months later, Yi Chun would rush into the dead end. Moreover, the battle strength Yi Chun had displayed made them very apprehensive. Mid 7-star battle strength. Generally speaking, although a peak 7-star battle strength was several times stronger than a mid 7-star battle strength, it still couldn't kill them in an instant. Only when one's strength was 10 times that of a peak 7-star battle strength could it be done. After all, Blood Rebirth Realm was not just for show. How could they know that Yi Chen's control over his power had already reached a frightening level? He could completely display 150% of his attack's power without any wastage. Make your move. I want to see what kind of strength you have to be able to turn the entrance of Elysium into a dead end, and whether you can survive under my sword. Yi Chen never went back on his words. He would do his best to kill this group of foreign race powerhouses guarding the dead end. He wasn't joking. Arrogant. Even if I can't keep you here today, I'll let you know that we demons aren't to be trifled with. The one who attacked was a demon king with a single horn. His strength was actually a little stronger than the troll emperor in Elysium. The spear in his hand stabbed forward, and demonic fire bloomed, sweeping across. Ding! Facing the single-horn demon king's full-powered attack, Yi Chen flicked his wrist and pointed his sword at the tip of the spear. It was impeccable, as if it had been precisely measured thousands of times. Poof! The spear shook like a snake, and in the next moment it flew out of his hand. The powerful single-horned demon king spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body split into pieces. How was this possible? The other 6 widened their eyes, as if they couldn't believe that this was done by Yi Chun. The current Yi Chun was almost a great killing machine. It wasn't that his strength was heaven-defying, but it was still his control of power. As long as one was weaker than him, they would be toyed with in the palm of his hand. If it was the previous Yi Chun, even if his combat strength was as strong as now, he wouldn't be able to do this. At most, he would make the single-horned demon king spit out blood and fly backward. Of course, that sword just now wasn't an ordinary sword move. It was the third move of vibrational sword art, Heaven Absolute Sword, which contained a powerful vibration force. Let's join forces. After knowing how terrifying Yi Chun was, the 6 instantly joined forces, and the body of the single-horned demon king that had been split into pieces quickly reformed and joined them. Kill. 7 7-star powerhouses. The weakest was an advanced 7-star, and the strongest was a 7-star overlord. They attacked Yi Chun at the same time. With such a powerful camp, they could even fight against an 8-star powerhouse. All right, I'll use you guys to test my limit. Yi Chun didn't use the 3 flowers borrowing the way, nor did he use the momentary brilliance or the space stop ability. He still used the Heaven Absolute Sword and attacked the 7 foreign race powerhouses with 7 consecutive strikes. Puff, puff, puff. Except for the 2 7-star Overlord Evil King and the Demon King, the other 5 powerhouses couldn't even withstand a single blow. Some of them had their weapons knocked out of their hands, their bodies split open, or their arms shook violently and turned into blood mist. At this moment, Yi Chun was a monster in their eyes. it wasn't over yet. After testing his extreme combat strength, Yi Chun released the Sword Realm that contained the Space Stop ability and killed 5 of the foreign race powerhouses instantly. When he was about to attack the last 2 7-star Overlord experts, a giant axe suddenly chopped over. This axe was extremely powerful. It looked ordinary, but it cut Yi Chun's Sword Realm open and shattered the Space Stop ability into nothingness. In the end, the axe chopped in front of Yi Chun. Momentary brilliance. Yi Chun sucked in a deep breath and stabbed at the axe. Compared to momentary brilliance, the Sword Realm Space Stop ability was a bit weaker. As if entangled by countless threads, the axe's speed slowed down. The tip of the demon's slaughtering sword, which was glowing with red light, struck the axe's weak point. With a clang, the huge axe bounced off and landed in the hands of a giant demon. 6th Heavenly Layer Life and Death Realm. Retreating rapidly, Yi Chun raised his eyes and looked at the giant demon before him, who was completely different from the Troll Emperor, with a grave expression. Powerful. You can actually use the space profound to this extent. This giant demon was dozens of li tall, and his body was extremely robust. The thickness of his arms and legs completely exceeded the norm. That axe just now was thrown by him. Like I said, the death path shouldn't be this simple. Yi Chun wasn't surprised. The demons and evil spirit race attached great importance to Elysium, so it was impossible for them to not have a backup plan. Under normal circumstances, they naturally wouldn't need to expose their backup plan. However, if something happened, the other party would definitely come out. 6th Layer Life and Death Realm was equivalent to 8-star battle strength. Moreover, the other party's strength was clearly higher than ordinary 8-star battle strength. Otherwise, an axe thrown over wouldn't have such power. Now, he finally understood why even Senior Yuan Emperor couldn't pass the death path. In other words, those invincible figures of different eras were rarely able to pass the death path. Perhaps they had fallen because of these backup plans. He originally thought that in this era, the Guardians of the Death Path would be a bit weaker. But clearly, he was wrong. The strength of the Guardians of the Death Path hadn't decreased at all. It was merely an illusion created by them not using their full strength. 8-star battle strength. I'm not his opponent, even if I use my full strength. I can only leave. Yi Chun glanced at the death path. Then his figure flickered and shot into the depths of the starry sky. You guys guard here, I'll go after him. The giant demon with the axe took a step forward and chased after Yi Chun. Powerful demonic ripples triggered waves of energy, allowing his instantaneous movement speed to reach a frightening level. Chapter 10:28. Everyone, I've already made it through the death road, but I was also chased by a 6th Sky of Life and Death Realm Demon King. But don't worry, he can't do anything to me. In the future, I will definitely come back, and we'll meet again. The jade letter in Su Jing's hand suddenly shattered, and Yi Chun's image appeared. This jade letter contained Yi Chun's essence blood. Even through the world barrier, it could still sense him. Unfortunately, it was only a one-time item and could not be used for communication. Being chased by a 6th Sky of Life and Death Realm Demon King. Will he be alright? 6th Sky of Life and Death Realm was equivalent to 8-star battle power. Even a low 8-star battle power would be several times more powerful than a 7-star tyrant. If it was a mid 8-star battle power, then it would be 10 times more powerful. Don't worry, Yi Chun said that the opponent can't do anything to him. So it must be true. After saying these words, Dugu Ju turned around and left. Haha, let him step on us a bit more. One day, Chu Zhongtian, will also go out and have a good look. This life of mine will not be in vain. Chu Zhongtian also left. In the end, only Xianhou, Demon Flower Emperor, Su Jing, and Murong Qingsheng were left. The sea is wide, and the sky is free for the birds to fly. Perhaps the outside world is more suitable for him. The inside world is a bit closed after all. Sighing, Xianhou said to the three, "Let's go. The great calamity of the alien race has just passed, and Elysium's vitality has been greatly damaged. Fortunately, Yi Chun has fixed some of the rules, and some of them have already reached the first sky of life and death realm under the guidance of the palace spirit. But we still can't be careless. It would be best if we can find the Savage Stone. Right now, all of the kings in Elysium did not amount to more than 300, and this was counting the underground races. Otherwise, there would only be 100. If another great calamity of the alien race came, they would not be able to handle it. After all, Yichen had already left. Of course, although this great calamity had caused them to lose a lot of members, it had also allowed their strength to increase by leaps and bounds. With the help of the demonic source, Murong Qingsheng had already reached the peak of the third sky of life and death realm. Together with Su Jing and Dugu Ju, they had become the pillars of the young generation of Elysium. If they were given some time, they would definitely continue to improve. In addition, Yi Chun had also left behind a consciousness projection. Even if this projection only had 1/3 of Yi Chun's battle power, it still had a high-level 7-star battle power. However, this projection was currently in closed-door training, accumulating Zhen Yuan, and would not casually battle with others. Yi Chun, see you in the future. Brother Yi, see you in the future. Glancing at the dead end, the four left together. Regardless of whether it was the starry sky of Elysium or the starry sky outside Elysium, one could not travel through the space. If the starry sky inside Elysium was so solid that even 7-star kings could not shake it, then the starry sky outside was 10 times or even dozens of times more solid. Fortunately, flying in the starry sky was much faster than flying in Elysium's void. There was almost no resistance, and the further they went, the faster they would go. You can't escape. The Unicorn Demon King threw the huge axe in his hand from time to time. With his 8-star battle power, once the axe hit the enemy, even if the enemy had the battle power of a 7-star tyrant, they would still be cut in half and suffer heavy injuries. Seems like the 6th sky of life and death realm speed is roughly like this. In fact, Yi Chen was testing how fast a 6th sky of life and death realm speed was. After all, with each increase in realm, the Zhen Yuan would become purer, and the speed would increase by a large margin. Conversely, the same was true for demonic power. The 4th layer of sword domain erupted, and Yi Chen's speed suddenly increased by several folds, leaving the Unicorn Demon King behind until he disappeared without a trace. Damn it! The Unicorn Demon King stopped and fiercely glared at the starry sky ahead. Originally, he believed that with his 6th sky of life and death realm cultivation, his speed should be faster than the opponent's, and he would soon catch up. He didn't expect that the opponent's normal speed was not much slower than his. Consider yourself lucky. But with just you alone, even if you're given a lifetime, you won't be able to create any waves. The Unicorn Demon King wasn't very apprehensive of Yi Chun. Their demons were filled with experts, and demon kings like him were innumerable. Above them, there were still 7th and 8th sky of life and death realm, and even 9th sky of life and death realm. They could be said to be the most powerful race in the boundless starry sky. Moreover, although the evil spirit race wasn't as powerful as them, it wasn't weak either. Although Yi Chun was a genius, if he wanted to contend against 2 races by himself, it would undoubtedly be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Holding the huge axe, the Unicorn Demon King rushed in the direction he came from. I can use the puppet battleship now. After flying for several hundred million li in one breath, Yi Chen took out an 800 meters long puppet battleship from his supreme grade storage ring. This time, he had brought a total of 10 battleships. The rest had been left in Elysium, and the majority had been distributed to others. The rest had been stored in the Falling Dust Sword sect in case of emergency. Although the battle strength of the puppet battleship wasn't much, it had a spatial shuttle array arranged on it. As long as the energy of the spatial stone was activated, it could travel through space. Traveling through space in the starry sky was many times faster than in Elysium. Elysium was possibly a man-made world. Therefore, its natural laws weren't perfect, and its space was also simulated. It seemed boundlessly mysterious, but in the end, it didn't contain the true mysteries of the universe. The cabin door opened, and Yi Chen walked in. At the front of the battleship was a huge and bright control room. In front of the control room were dozens of flat crystals. Through the crystals, one could see the outside world. However, from the outside, one couldn't see inside, and soul power couldn't enter either. The entire battleship had countless arrays arranged on it. There were spatial shuttle arrays, fortification arrays, soul power isolation arrays, energy circulation arrays, defensive arrays, and so on. Without any exaggeration, the price of a battleship was astonishing. It wasn't something an ordinary life and death king could afford. Start the battleship, full speed ahead. In the center of the control room was a meter-tall metal pillar. At the top of the pillar was a skull-sized crystal ball. This crystal ball was the core of the battleship. In order to control the battleship, one would have to leave a soul imprint on it. Only through the soul imprint would one be able to control the battleship to the greatest degree. Whoosh! Whoosh! Dozens of hidden devices on the sides and tail of the battleship opened, shooting out dazzling blue flames. After a slight pause, the huge battleship moved forward at full speed. This star map can only record a limited number of stars. Not every star can be recorded. The crystal ball's radiance circulated, and a light screen appeared above it. On the screen were numerous twinkling stars. The closest one was a fiery red star. It seemed to be the closest star, but its actual distance was unknown. After all, the stars in the starry sky couldn't be described with numbers. There were billions and billions of stars. Clearly, this fiery red star was an important star, which was why it was recorded. And according to the scale, the distance between the two places was 900,000 light years. Let's go to this star called Firebird first. Yi-Chen's finger pointed at the fiery red star. Soon, the battleship's speed reached the point where it could travel through space. Connect to the spatial stone and travel. Through the soul imprint, Yi-Chen issued an order. Beginning space travel. 10, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1. A mechanical voice sounded. Then, with a hum, the battleship shook violently and entered a mysterious, chaotic space. As expected, this is the real void. The void of Elysium is just a facade. Traveling through the void, it was unknown how much time had passed. When it came out again, according to the scale, Yi-Chen found that the battleship had traveled 300,000 light years. And only 1 year had passed. It's too fast. It traveled 300,000 light years in 1 year. This speed shocked Yi-Chen. But when he thought about the vastness of the universe, this speed didn't seem to be much. Otherwise, if it was too slow, by the time it reached Firebird, hundreds or thousands of years might have passed. This battleship could travel through space for a maximum of 1 year. After 1 year, it would need to wait a month before it could travel again. If it traveled continuously, it would cause the space travel matrix to collapse, destroying the most valuable part of the battleship. Therefore, for the next period of time, the battleship slowly flew in space. Isn't that the battleship of our demons? In front of them, a small battleship approached. This battleship was only 100 meters long, but it was much more luxurious than Yi-Chen's. Inside the battleship were 2 6th-layer life and death realm demon kings and 6 5th-layer life and death realm demon kings. Their destination this time was Elysium. They were going to change shifts. Which demon king of my demon race is inside? Come out. One of the 6th-layer life and death realm demon kings yelled. Yi-Chen's expression changed. He had almost forgotten that there was a difference between the battleship of the demons and the evil spirit race. In other words, the battleship of each race was different in the outside world. If he were to openly ride the battleship of the demons to the Firebird planet, he might immediately be chased by a large number of demon kings. It seems like I'll have to use the battleship of the demons less in the future. Right now, I still can't contend against all the demons. Putting away the battleship, Yi-Chen's figure flickered, shooting into the distance. It's not one of our demons. Chase. The 8 demon kings were furious. There was actually someone who wanted to rob the battleship of the demons. It was simply courting death. However, they soon exchanged glances. With the speed of their battleship, they actually couldn't catch up to the other party. As for the space travel, it was not used to chase people. Otherwise, a single space travel could bring them to a very distant place. Chapter 1029. The starlight was resplendent, deep, and dreamy. In this boundless starry sky, the stars had become the main theme of the entire world. It was precisely because of their existence that the starry sky did not seem so desolate and lifeless, giving this world an indescribable vitality and beauty. In the distance, a blue puppet battleship was speeding over. This was a puppet battleship that was over 300 meters long. The lines of the battleship were very smooth, and there was not the slightest obstruction from the beginning to the end. Occasionally, one would see a blue flowing light flashing along the body of the battleship. It was noble and sharp. On the left and right sides of the battleship, there were 2 patterns of blue leaves. If an expert were here, they would certainly recognize that this was a mid-sized Heavenly King battleship. Its price was 50 times that of an ordinary mid-sized King-grade battleship, and 10 times that of a large King-grade battleship. Its defensive cover could withstand the continuous attacks of a 4th-layer King, and it could even withstand the attacks of 5th-layer King for a period of time. At this moment, in the control room at the front of the battleship, a man and a woman were standing there, gazing at the starry sky through a crystal. The woman was in her 20s. She had a head of long blue hair, a pretty face, and a straight nose. Her figure seemed a bit thin, and her complexion was abnormally pale, as if she had just recovered from serious illness. The man was a black-haired old man. He did not stand shoulder to shoulder with the woman, but instead took a step back. "Uncle Lin, how long have we been out this time?" the woman asked. "Second miss, about 5 years." The black-haired old man said. 5 years have passed so quickly. Fortunately, the 5 years were not wasted. There is indeed a resurrection fruit in the Black Death's secret realm. With this fruit, Sister will be able to recover. The woman revealed a faint smile. Yeah, with Big Miss's talent, she shouldn't have died so early. She could have easily attacked the 5th, 6th, or even 7th layer of life and death realm, becoming the first Emperor-grade character of our Lanya family in thousands of years. If Big Miss can become an Emperor-grade character, our Lanya family will become the #1 family on the Firebird Star. Speaking of the woman's elder sister, the black-haired old man couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She is only 42 years old this year, but she has already reached the 4th sky of life and death realm. Compared to her, I'm still far behind. However, she has also sacrificed a lot for the family. This time, she almost died. How I wish I could lend her a helping hand. That's right. That's right. Second miss, don't look down on yourself. Being able to cultivate to the 2nd sky of life and death realm at the age of 38 is already extremely rare. What you lack is just a lot of life and death battles. In his heart, the black-haired old man did not think that the 2nd miss was inferior to the 1st Mississippi. The only difference was that the 1st miss was strong, while the 2nd miss was too kind and did not like to fight. Creak. The cabin door of the control room opened, and a young man in a fiery red shirt walked in. "Xian, what are you talking about with Uncle Lin? Let's have a drink in the lobby." The woman called Xian creased her brows. This young man was the successor of the Firebird Star Firebird family. His name was Young Master Firebird, and his strength was quite frightening. He was ranked 5th among the Firebird Star's 10 heroes. He was only 40 this year, but he had already cultivated to the peak of the 3rd sky of life and death realm. If he could enter the 4th sky, he would certainly be ranked in the top 3. 5 years ago, because the Lanya family did not have enough kings, the Black Death's secret realm was too dangerous. Therefore, they hired a group of kings, and this young Master Firebird joined them at that time. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that this young Master Firebird was interested in the 2nd miss of the Lanya family. How could he let go of such a rare opportunity? The black-haired old man looked displeased as he said, "Young Master Firebird, our 2nd miss is too tired. She won't accompany you for a drink. Next time you enter the control room, please knock on the cabin door." Hee. In a moment of desperation, I forgot. Young Master Firebird's eyes squinted as a cold light surged within them. This Uncle Lin had spoken rudely to him time and time again, which was really annoying. If not for his cultivation base being at the fifth sky of life and death realm and the #1 expert on this battleship, he would have taught him a lesson, lest he thought he was something else. No matter how powerful he was only a servant. Young Master Firebird, I'm sorry. Xin is not in the mood today. Let's do it another day. Lon Xin it declined tactfully. All right then. I hope Xin won't refuse me next time. After all, you and I have been through life and death together for 5 years. How many 5 years are there in a life? Exiting the control room, young Master Firebird closed the cabin door. Humph! Seeing young Master Firebird leave, Uncle Lin coldly snorted and said to Lon Xin, "Second miss, sometimes you have to be a bit tougher. Don't let others lead you by the nose. In this regard, eldest miss is much better than you. Sister is sister after all, and I am me. Moreover, during these 5 years, he has indeed helped us a lot." As Lon Xin spoke, she looked toward the sky again. The sky was her favorite scenery, and she could only see it for a long time when the puppet battleship could not travel. As if sensing something, the blue color in Lon Xin's eyes deepened. Through the crystal, she saw a beam of light flying toward them. "Someone is here," Lon Xin said. "What's wrong?" Although Uncle Lin's strength was many times more powerful than Lon Xin's, he did not have her eyesight, and his soul power could not spread out too far. A person is flying in this direction. Caution is the parent of safety. People of the Lanya family, listen up. Puppet cannons, prepare to charge. Uncle Lin's voice came through the crystal ball in the center of the control room. Yes, on the outer wall of the blue battleship, dozens of puppet cannons extended out. As a king-level battleship, these puppet cannons could kill kings at the third sky of life and death realm. If given enough time, they could even severely wound kings at the fourth sky of life and death realm. Of course, this was under the condition that the opponent did not move. Therefore, they needed to charge in advance, ready to attack at any time. After getting rid of the demon's battleship, Yichen continued flying for a day and a night, trying his best to deviate from his original path. On this day, he used his soul eye and looked in all directions. After cultivating the Yuan spirit secret art, Yichen's soul eye could already see everything within 2 billion li. Soon, a blue battleship entered his sight. This battleship did not seem to be inferior to the small demon's battleship, but its size was several times bigger. On both sides of the battleship, there was a blue leaf pattern, which was probably the symbol of some family. Since his own battleship could not be exposed, Yichen decided to take a free ride. At worst, he would just have to pay a small fee. After making up his mind, Yichen flew toward the blue battleship at 60 to 70% speed. He did not want to be too shocking and be feared by others. 10,000 li away, Yichen stopped. His eyes first scanned the dozen puppet cannons on the battleship, then landed on the blue battleship's crystal. "Who are you? What business do you have?" A slightly aged voice was heard. "I'm Yichen, and I'm planning to go to the Firebird Star. I wonder if you can give me a ride?" Of course, the fee will not be small. Yichen did not say too much. The less he said, the better. If he said too much, he would be exposed, although he had no secrets. "No, we're not going to the Firebird Star." The other side refused. Although a bit disappointed, Yichen did not give up. This place is several 100,000 light years away from the Firebird Star. If I fly there myself, I'm afraid it will take countless years. Don't worry, my cultivation base is only at the third sky of life and death realm, so I'm not a threat to you. As for the fee, as long as it is not too excessive, I can accept it. This blue battleship was noble and imposing, obviously coming from a big family. Yichen did not believe that there were no experts above the third sky of life and death realm on it. "Uncle Lin, let him come up. I don't think he's a bad guy. Moreover, this place is indeed too far from the Firebird Star. Leaving him here alone is a bit inappropriate." Lon Sheener's pair of beautiful eyes looked at Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin smiled bitterly. This second miss was too kind. Could she tell a good or bad person with her eyes? If she could, there wouldn't be so many sanctimonious people in this world. All right, but the fee must be collected. We're not doing charity. Uncle Lin agreed. Yi-Chen was only at the third sky of life and death realm, so he indeed did not pose too much of a threat. For a youngster like him, it was quite amazing. However, even Firebird Prince didn't dare to act presumptuously in front of him. So how powerful could this youngster be? One more or one less wouldn't affect Yi-Chen at all. If the other dared to make any strange moves, he would immediately kill him without any mercy. Our second miss is kind enough to agree to take you to the Firebird Star. Come on up, Uncle Lin said. Many thanks. Cupping his fists, Yi-Chen flew toward the blue battleship. The cabin doors slowly opened, revealing a man and a woman standing inside. The man was a black-haired old man, who should be the one who spoke just now. The woman had blue hair and a pretty face. She was most likely the second miss of his family. Many thanks to this second miss. Yi-Chen cupped his fists again and entered the battleship. The cabin door closed. Uncle Lin said, "This place is 600,000 light years away from the Firebird Star. For 10,000 light years, I'll charge you 10 yuan stones. 600 yuan stones in total." Uncle Lin. Lon Sheener was startled. 600 yuan stones was not a small number. Under normal circumstances, 120 yuan stones would be enough for 600,000 light years. All right. Unexpectedly, Yi-Chen readily agreed and took out 600 primal chaos crystals from his storage ring, handing them over to the other party. Yuan stones were the currency of the outside world. They contain an extremely powerful energy and could be absorbed by any race. In terms of energy, 1 yuan stone was equivalent to 10,000 extreme Great Spirit stones. However, its value was at least 10,000 times more than extreme Great Spirit stones. The reason why Yi-Chen had yuan stones was because the battleship's energy source was these stones. Each battleship had several hundred yuan stones in reserve. He had several tens of thousands of yuan stones on him. Chapter 10:30. It seems like you're quite rich. Uncle Lin had actually asked for an exorbitant price and waited for Yi-Chen to bargain. 300 yuan stones was his bottom line, but he hadn't expected that Yi-Chen would agree without hesitation. What he didn't know was that Yi-Chen had no concept of yuan stones. He thought that 10 yuan stones was normal for a journey of 10,000 light years. Since he had accepted Luo Yunyang's money, Uncle Lin said, "There's a luxurious room on the Blue Leaf. You can stay there. Also, you can enjoy the delicious food and wine in the lounge. If you don't like it, you can ask the chef to cook according to your instructions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied." The biggest use of a battleship puppet was for traveling. Its secondary use was to rest. The universe was vast. If one didn't have a battleship puppet, they would feel like they had been traveling their entire lives. With a battleship puppet, they could travel and cultivate at the same time. When they were free, they could even sit in the lounge and drink some wine and eat some good food. "Young Master Yi, why are you stranded here alone?" While Uncle Lin and Yi-Chen were talking, Lon Xen was carefully sizing up Yi-Chen. Yi-Chen looked very young. At least on the surface, he seemed to be a year or two younger than young Master Firebird. He looked to be in his early 20s. He was dressed in a spotless blue robe and had a treasured sword at his waist. Although the sword was still sheathed, it gave off a reserved feeling. Yi-Chen's appearance was delicate and handsome. His face was slightly pale, and his eyes were as clear as a lake. However, they were deep and unfathomable. Based on appearance alone, Yi-Chen couldn't be considered a peerlessly handsome man. However, in terms of temperament, Lon Xen had never seen anyone more outstanding than Yi-Chen. Yi-Chen didn't want to lie to her, so he said, "I came from a faraway place. I plan to make a trip to the Firebird planet. As for the details, I won't go into detail." Lon Xen nodded. Everyone had their own secrets. Since Luo Yunyang wasn't willing to tell her, she wouldn't force him. "Uncle Lin was being cautious, so I lied to you. We're going to the Firebird planet. Since it's on the way, that's for the best. Thank you for your hospitality." Yi-Chen was already satisfied that the other party was willing to let him board the warship. As for the rest, it didn't matter. The luxurious room on the Blue Leaf was indeed very luxurious. It was spacious enough, and there was even a huge bathing pool inside for bathing. Opposite the bathing pool was a 5-meter square crystal. Through the crystal, one could see the starry sky outside. Bathing and watching the starry sky at the same time was an enjoyable experience. After taking a bath, Yi Chun began to cultivate. He was not in a hurry to break through to the fourth layer. Although there was a certain chance of success, it would be too much for the gate to bear. By the time he tried to break through to the fifth layer, it would completely collapse. Every time he tried to break through to the next realm, he had to refine the gate to an extremely firm and stable state. During the battle with the Troll Emperor, Yi Chun had risked his life to break through to the third layer, which had already caused some cracks to appear in the gate. Although they were not obvious, they were still a hidden danger that could not be ignored. Therefore, for a long time to come, he would not be able to break through to the fourth heavenly layer. Only by condensing his Tao gate to a very solid degree could he begin the next step. However, although the realm could not be increased, it did not mean that his strength could not be increased. The fourth style of Autumn Water Sword Arts, Autumn Water, was created because both the Metal Profound and Water Profound had reached perfection, but they had yet to be completely fused. The fusion of two profounds to perfection was much more difficult than he had imagined. Once he succeeded, its might would multiply, and it would not be any weaker than the current merciless water and fire. The third style of vibrational sword arts, Sky Extinction Sword, had made great progress in the past year. With the completion of the Metal Profound, as long as the Earth Profound reached perfection as well, the Sky Extinction Sword would undergo a complete transformation. One sword strike would be able to shatter anything. This was his favorite sword move, and it had always been successful. At present, Yi Chun's two strongest sword moves were Merciless Water and Instant Glory. Merciless Water and Fire contained the Water Profound and Fire Profound. The Water Profound was already at perfection, while the Fire Profound was at great completion. Although the balance had been broken, its might had increased a lot. What he needed to do was to comprehend the Fire Profound to perfection as well. At that time, Merciless Water and Fire would be the real Merciless Water and Fire. It would be many times more powerful than ordinary top profound sword skills, and it could even be 10 times more powerful. With one sword strike, it could burn and destroy everything. As for Instant Glory, it was very special. This sword move contained the Space Profound, but Yi Chun's Space Profound was only at 70% completion. However, the power it could display was actually greater than Merciless Water and Fire. From this, it could be seen that the Space Profound was one of the strongest profounds, and it was not without reason. If Yi Chun's Space Profound could reach 80 or 90% completion, the power of Instant Glory would be unimaginable. However, Yi Chun still felt that the Instant Glory, which only contained 70% of Space Profound, still had a lot of untapped potential. It was like a pile of ordinary iron. An ordinary blacksmith could only forge an ordinary iron sword, while a famous blacksmith could forge a well-tempered sword that could cut iron like mud. Space Profound was different from other profounds. There were many areas that needed to be explored. One couldn't blindly focus on improving Space Profound. Instead, one should unearth the potential of Space Profound one by one. Only with a good foundation would one be able to go further in the future. 1 month is up. Let's go through space. In the control room, Lon Sheener used her soul imprint to control the blue leaf. Buzz! A spatial whirlpool appeared in front of the blue leaf. Slowly, the blue leaf entered it and disappeared. Comprehending profounds on a battleship wasn't very realistic. Profounds were the operating laws of nature. One needed to observe and understand nature in order to improve. Thus, Yi Chun set his sights on fusing profounds. First was the Autumn Water Sword Art's fourth move, Autumn Water. In the past year, he had gained a lot of comprehension in the fusion of Metal Profound and Water Profound. He was just a step away from the next step. Half a month later, the door was finally kicked open. With the perfect fusion of metal and water profounds, not only did the Autumn Water Sword Art's power double, but its attack form also became illusory. One couldn't tell the difference between real and fake. If the Merciless Water and Merciless Fire were purely destructive, then the Autumn Water Sword Art could kill without spilling blood. It was hard to tell which of the two moves was superior. Each had its own merits. The Autumn Water Sword art had been successfully completed. Next, Yi Chen focused all of his attention on Moment of Glory. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. It's a pity that I can't test the power of the instant glory here. In the past 3 months, Yi Chen had improved a lot. He had unearthed the potential of the instant glory. Of course, this was mainly due to the accumulation of the past year. It's time to go out and take a walk. After not going out for 3 months, Yi Chen felt that his body was a little rusty. After opening the room door and walking through a long corridor, Yi Chen arrived at a luxurious hall. The Hall of the Blue Leaf was located in the center of the puppet warship. It was 50 meters long and 30 meters wide. It wouldn't feel crowded even if it contained a few hundred people. The hall was brightly lit. About 100 people were drinking tea and chatting. It was quite lively. Yi Chen didn't attract much attention when he came out. There would be people entering the room to cultivate every day. On the other hand, there would be people coming out to drink and chat. He found a seat, and soon, a waiter walked over. "What would you like to drink and eat?" Yi Chen opened the menu and said, "I'll have a bottle of Supreme Grade Star wine and some dishes to go with it." You have to pay for Supreme Grade wine. The Star wine is 10 yuan stones per bottle. Anything that was Supreme Grade would not be cheap. On the Blue Leaf, they could eat and drink as much as they wanted without paying, but Supreme Grade wine still had to be paid. Here, Yi Chen didn't mind and gave the waiter 10 yuan stones. Soon, the dishes were served, and Yi Chen slowly enjoyed them. "Young Master Firebird, your Fire Thunder Divine Fist is truly powerful. It killed a sentient second layer life and Death Realm giant star beast with one punch." On the other side of the hall, a dozen kings were talking and laughing. Actually, that star beast was not weak. If not for my Fire Thunder God Fist improvement, I might not have been able to kill it in one punch. A young man in fiery red clothes said modestly, "You're too modest. Star beasts usually don't have any intelligence, and those that do are extremely frightening. A life and death second layer star beast is completely comparable to a life and death king, but still couldn't take one punch from you. Hee hee, everyone is flattering me too much. Come, let's drink." The young man, called Young Master Firebird, was very happy to be flattered and repeatedly raised his cup. "Brother, when did you come in? How come I haven't seen you before?" On Yi Chen's side, a king in his 30s walked over and asked suspiciously, "I came here 3 months ago. So that's how it is. You should have followed a team on an expedition, but the team got into trouble and lost your puppet battleship, right?" The middle-aged king had seen this kind of situation many times. Not everyone had a puppet battleship. Only those big families or powerful kings had the qualifications to own one. Without a puppet battleship, if one wanted to return, they could only hitch a ride. Of course, they would have to pay some yuan stones. Yi Chen smiled, but didn't explain. Young Master Firebird's voice was too noisy, causing the middle-aged king to sigh with emotion. That young Master Firebird is indeed extraordinary. He's only at the peak of the 3rd layer, but he already has such a frightening battle strength. Even a giant star beast that is cultivated to the 2nd layer of life and death realm couldn't withstand one punch from him. It's said that he can contend against a 4th layer heavenly king. Seems very powerful. Of course, he is one of the top 10 young heroes of Firebird Star. With his Fire Thunder God Fist, it's hard to find an opponent. However, you're so young, and your cultivation base is not inferior to young Master Firebird. Seems like you're also a great genius. The middle-aged king sized up Yi Chen and smiled. "I was just lucky." Yi Chen faintly smiled. Chapter 1031. While talking with him, Yi Chen asked about some things he didn't know. Gradually, he got a general understanding of the outside world. In the vast universe, there were many worlds that were suitable for life to evolve. There were high-level worlds and low-level worlds. High-level worlds had perfect rules and powerful individuals. Low-level worlds had more incomplete rules. The further one progressed, the more restrictions they would face. Therefore, if one wanted to continue growing, he or she would have to leave the world he or she was in. Besides the many worlds, there were also some planets with life. They were all huge. The smallest one had a diameter of more than 10 million miles. The biggest one had a diameter of more than 100 million miles. There were even superplanets with a diameter of several hundred million miles or even a billion miles. No matter if it was a planet with a diameter of more than 10 million miles or a billion miles, they all had one thing in common. They had a strong rejection of energy. It was speculated that the core of a planet with life should be an unimaginably condensed energy core. Any other person's energy paled in comparison to it. No, it was like an ant in front of the ocean. It was not worth mentioning. Therefore, outside of a planet with life, you might be able to destroy a planet with a diameter of 10,000 miles. However, on a planet with life, it was already not bad if you could destroy a mountain. The Firebird star was one of the many stars with life. It had a diameter of 27 million miles, and there were countless life forms living on it. There were humans, beasts, half-demons, and demons. However, there weren't any races like the demon race or the evil spirit race that were extremely domineering. It's really a terrifying planet with life. Compared to the Firebird planet, the planet that Yi Chun had been on before he transmigrated was like a sesame seed. There was no comparison at all. As for the important planets recorded in the core of the puppet battleship, they were probably planets with life. Suddenly, the noise in the hall grew louder. Miss Lon Sheener is out. The Lanya family's first and second young ladies are both swordsmen. The first young lady's sword art is sharp and overbearing. She is invincible. The second young lady's sword art is dreamy and beautiful. However, in comparison, the second young lady is more charming. She is indeed one of the 5 beauties of the Firebird planet. Lon Sheener's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Sheener, you're finally out. Come, sit here." The Firebird smiled when he saw Lon Sheener. He stood up and invited her to take a seat. The seat beside him was specially reserved for her. "Miss, this seat is more comfortable." Uncle Lin chose another seat for Lon Sheener. "Thank you, Uncle Lin." Hearing this, Lon Sheener sat down. With his strength, he could contend against a 4th-layer life and death realm heavenly king, but he had to be an ordinary king. And this ordinary was only relative. To be able to cultivate to the 4th layer, who wasn't a genius? Perhaps entering the life and death realm without too much of a genius could also succeed. However, to reach the 4th layer, one needed absolute talent. He could contend against an ordinary 4th-layer life and death realm heavenly king, but it would be a bit difficult for him to contend against a powerful one. Not to mention that Uncle Lin was a 5th-layer life and death realm expert. Of course, regardless of whether he had the strength to surpass Uncle Lin or not, he wouldn't do anything that would be beneath his dignity in front of Lon Sheener. As if to dissolve the awkwardness of the Firebird Prince, a youngster beside him said with a smile, "In this trip to the Black Death's secret realm, Miss Xer's sword arts have made astonishing progress. In my opinion, even if Miss Xer isn't in the top 5, she's at least in the top 10. Xin knows her own limits. She's fine when exchanging pointers, but in a real fight, I reckon they can beat me in 2 or 3 moves." Lon Sheener creased her brows. She didn't like being flattered. The Firebird Prince recovered from the awkwardness and said with a smile, "Xer, you don't need to be modest. In my opinion, although you Tianhin sword arts aren't bad, the traces are too obvious. It can't compare to your ethereal elegance. If it weren't for the fact that your cultivation level is slightly lower, he might not be your opponent." "Hee hee, thank you for your praise. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." The reason why Lon Sheener didn't come out often was because she didn't want to be the center of attention. She didn't want people to flatter her intentionally or unintentionally. She liked a quiet life where no one would disturb her. When talking to her, people could treat her like an ordinary person. Lon Sheener stood up and left her seat, walking in the direction of Yi Chun. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Lon Sheener asked with a smile. "Of course not. Miss Xer, please sit," the middle-aged king hurriedly said. Lon Sheener looked at Yi Chun. "Anything is fine." Yi Chun nodded. Lon Sheener elegantly sat down and said, "This seems to be the first time you've come out in 3 months. You're really hardworking." As the owner of the Blue Leaf ship, Lon Sheener knew everything about the Blue Leaf ship. It's not really hardworking. I'm used to it. Yichen indeed treated cultivation as the most ordinary thing and didn't think it was very hard. You're the same as my sister. You treat cultivation as the only thing and don't care about anything else. Lon Sheener asked someone to bring over a bottle of top-grade blue leaf wine. This was a fine wine produced by the Blue Leaf family, and it was very rare. She poured a cup for Yi Chun and the middle-aged king before pouring one for herself. Everyone pursues different things, so the path they choose is also different. However, for me, cultivation is a part of life and not the only thing. Yi Chun took a sip of the Blue Leaf wine and felt that it was slightly better than the star wine. It seems that I misspoke. Lon Sheener felt that Yi Chun was very different. He was different from all the young people she had met. He was like a cloud in the sky, so quiet and pure. It was as if nothing around him could affect his state of mind. Sitting with him, the unhappiness she had felt earlier gradually disappeared. Her heart was like still water. She seemed to see the blue leaves of her family dancing in the sky, ethereal and beautiful. This was also the main reason why she had walked over. Mr. Yi, you're a swordsman. Although I haven't seen your sword technique, I can guess that it must be very powerful. I wonder if you can explain it to me? Lon Sheener suddenly said. Please. Yi Chun nodded. 5 years ago, my sword intent had already reached the peak of the 6th rank. I've experienced countless battles on this trip, but why hasn't my sword intent improved at all? Going to the Black Death's secret realm was not only to find the soul-returning fruit, but also to train himself. Yi Chun looked at Lon Sheener and said, Your heart is not firm enough. You're still hesitating. A swordsman should advance courageously and have no regrets. Actually, I can see that you don't like fighting. So, you're not suitable to be a swordsman. The middle-aged king was dumbfounded. Yi Chun's words were too much of a blow. Moreover, it was from a girl. Uncle Lin was slightly angered. Yi Chun's words were too unpleasant, although they weren't without reason. Lon Sheener's expression changed several times. Finally, she smiled bitterly and said, Your words are the same as my sister's. She also thinks that I'm not suitable to be a swordsman. However, the swordsman in my heart is different from you guys. The sword doesn't have to kill. It can also be used to entertain oneself. The definition of a swordsman is just something added by the later generations. Yi Chun smiled. You know what I mean by a swordsman? It's just that you don't want to admit it. Swordsman was just a name. Being entangled with this name meant that one still had some stubbornness. In other words, if Lon Sheener didn't agree with the concept of a swordsman, she could say that she wasn't a swordsman. I can't outtalk you. Lon Sheener was speechless. Arrogant. You dare to represent swordsmen with just your words? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A discordant voice came. It was young Master Firebird. It turned out that Lon Xian Er's departure to come to Yi Chun's place had annoyed the Firebird Prince a lot. He felt that he had lost a lot of face, so he brought a group of people over. Hearing Yi Chun's words, it gave him the opportunity to speak. Your cultivation is not low, but your tone is not small. A young swordsman beside young Master Firebird mocked. Yi Chun didn't raise his head and said indifferently, You already said that it's just my words. I also didn't say that I can represent swordsmen. When did you hear me say that? If I, young Master Firebird, say that you said it, then you said it. Why? Do you think there's a problem? I don't have a problem. It's you who has a problem. Yi Chun's expression was indifferent. He wasn't angry at all. You. Young Master Firebird's eyes were spitting fire. Young Master Firebird, why bother talking nonsense with him? The young swordsman took a step forward. I am Yi Chun. Do you dare to fight with me? In the Firebird planet, the Firebird clan was the strongest. Although his clan wasn't small, if he could build a good relationship with the future successor of the Firebird clan, it would be very beneficial to him. Young Master Yu, this is a conversation between me and young Master Yi. You guys are too rude. Lon Sheener's face was filled with anger. She couldn't help but look at Uncle Lin, hoping that he would stop them. Uncle Lin didn't like what Yi Chun had said just now. He felt that it was not a bad thing for someone to take him down a notch. He said, Second Lady, it's only a fight. It doesn't matter. Anyway, fighting on the blue leaf doesn't allow Jun Yuan or willpower. It's just a competition of sword arts. Uncle Lin. Lan Xiner felt a bit sorry for Yi Chun. She could feel that he wasn't targeting her. He was just speaking the truth, although it wasn't pleasant to hear. However, this Yi Chun was not a normal character. His cultivation base was at the peak of the third sky of life and death realm. He was a famous sword artist among the young generation of the Firebird planet, and people called him the Su Yang Sword King. Chapter 1032. What, you don't dare? Yu Chen's tone was full of disdain. Young Master Firebird sneered as well. Although Yu Chun talked big, he was afraid that he would be nothing more than an embroidered pillow in a fight. He was very clear about Yu Chen's strength. Within the third sky of life and death realm, apart from a few people, he was practically unrivaled. His rising sun sword arts were even more tyrannical and unstoppable. Without using Zhen Yuan and willpower, his advantage was even greater. After cultivating for 3 months, my body is getting rusty. In that case, let's get some exercise. Unexpectedly, Yi Chun didn't refuse. It was not that he was eager to show off, but he was following his heart. His heart was telling him that if he didn't accept this battle, there would be even more troubles in the future. Young Master Yi, be careful. This Yu Chun is not only tyrannical in his sword arts, but also a body-refining expert. Seeing that the situation had already turned out like this, Lan Xiner could only secretly warn Yi Chun. No matter. Yi Chun didn't care about Yu Chen's strength, as it was meaningless. The blue leaf was 380 meters long, 130 meters wide, and 90 meters tall. It was divided into several levels, and opening up a huge training field was a piece of cake. On the martial field, there were many people exchanging pointers. They didn't use any true essence or will. They were competing purely on their own martial arts skills. Suddenly, they saw over 100 people arrive on the martial field. They couldn't help but stop and look over with a strange expression. Could it be that 2 heavyweights were going to compete in martial arts? Worthy of being a king-grade battleship. Compared to ordinary king-grade battleships, it's countless times more powerful. From his previous conversation with the middle-aged king, Yi Chun knew that puppet battleships were divided into various grades. The most common ones were king-grade battleships, followed by king-grade battleships, and even better ones were emperor-grade battleships. The 10 Demons battleships in a storage ring were the most common ones. They were purely used to carry people and didn't have many things to enjoy, not to mention such a huge training field. Yi Chun could see that the ground, ceiling, and walls of the training field were covered with many arrays. There were sturdy arrays, uniform arrays, force unloading arrays, and gravity arrays. Without using Zhen Yuan and will, it would be extremely difficult to destroy the training field. Of course, body refining king strength was also forbidden. Only the most basic physical strength was allowed. What did you say? Rising Sun Sword King Yu Chun wants to compete with this youngster? With so many people present, those who didn't know the truth had already heard the whole story from their friends. Yu Chun is 55 years old this year. He became famous earlier than the Firebird planet's 10 heroes. His rising sun swordsmanship is not only tyrannical, but it is also fast. It is said that it is as fast as light. Perhaps his swordsmanship is not particularly outstanding, but many people who are stronger than him have been killed or defeated by his rising sun swordsmanship. This young man does not seem weak either. Being able to train to the third sky of life and death realm at such a young age, he is undoubtedly a genius. It will not be easy for Yu Chun to beat him. It's hard to say. Some people are talented in cultivation, but their martial arts talent is a level lower. Everyone discussed while sizing up Yu Chun and Yi Chun. Of course, most of them were still paying attention to Yi Chun. After all, Yi Chun was too unfamiliar to them. In the center of the training field, Yu Chun and Yi Chun stood 30 meters apart. One sword. I only need one sword to defeat you. Yu Chun's expression was confident. This kind of confidence stemmed from thousands of victories. If I were you, I wouldn't say that. Yi Chun said indifferently. Uncle Lin, can you tell which one of them has the strongest sword aura? Lan Xiner could feel that Yu Chun's sword aura was like the morning sun. It seemed calm, but contained boundless explosive power. However, she couldn't tell what Yi Chen's sword aura was. It was faintly discernible and untraceable. Uncle Lin frowned and said, "It's hard to say. This young man seems a little strange." Actually, he was the same as Lan Xen. He could tell the strength of Yu Chen's sword, but he couldn't tell the strength of Yi Chen's sword. This was very abnormal. Could it be that he has reached the state of having no sword in his hand and no sword in his heart? Lan Xiner suddenly thought of a possibility. Once, her sister had talked to her about sword artists. She said that on the Firebird Star, only she and Prince Jinghong had reached the realm of no sword in the hand and sword in the heart. At this realm, the external weaknesses had disappeared, and the sword could be drawn out without any warning. As long as the heart and the sword were there would be nothing they could not do. The next realm was the realm of no sword in the hand and sword in the heart. If the external weaknesses had disappeared and the sword in the heart had disappeared, then the spiritual weaknesses had also disappeared. In addition, in the realm of no sword in the heart, one could control the sword momentum and restrain the sword momentum. When killing, one would not feel the slightest danger. This realm not only had the top qualities of a sword artist, but also the top qualities of an assassin. Before killing, there would not be any spiritual fluctuations. Had Yi Chen reached this realm? Lan Xen didn't believe it. This realm was too unbelievable for her. Even her sister and Prince Jinghong were far from reaching it. "Yu Chen, let's begin. Don't disappoint me," Prince Firebird said with his arms crossed. "Don't worry. Yu Chen, never waste time with my opponent." Rising Sun. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Chen drew his sword and stabbed at Yi Chen. This sword was so fast that it surpassed the senses of ordinary people. It was as if he was not holding a sword, but a ray of sunlight. Now, this ray of sunlight was shooting at Yi Chen. Rising Sun Swordsmanship's first move, Rising Sunday, facing Yu Chen's lightning-fast sword. Yi Chen's expression didn't change at all. He unsheathed the great sword on his waist and blocked that ray of sunlight. It was as if he didn't need any time to pull out the sword. Although this kind of speed was not as tyrannical as Yu Chen's Rising Sun Swordsmanship, it was more direct and chilling. A metal squeezing sound was heard. The great sword in Yu Chen's hand lost all its light and started to shake violently. In the next second, the sword fell out of Yu Chen's hand as he spurted out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was blown away. If one looked carefully, one would find that his right arm was completely hanging down. The huge training field was completely silent. It wasn't that they didn't think that Yi Chen could beat Yu Chen, but they didn't think that Yi Chen would be able to kill Yu Chen within a second. They knew how powerful Yu Chen was. In the Black Death Secret Realm, he had killed 3 Life and Death Realm Demon Kings all by himself. It should be known that even the most ordinary Life and Death Realm Demon Kings were powerful existences. Among them, almost all of them were powerful, and there were no weaklings. Moreover, Yu Chen himself was a body-refining king, so his body strength was astonishing. Even if chi power was not allowed in this place, it wouldn't hinder him from using his advantage in this aspect. However, what did they see? Yu Chen not only made Yu Chen's sword fall out of his hand, but also made him spurt out blood and fly back. Even his right arm seemed to be temporarily crippled. "Too weak. He can't even take 5% of my power." Yi Chen inwardly shook his head. Yu Chen's strength could be ranked in the top 20 among the young generation of the Firebird planet. However, it was still barely satisfactory. In Elysium, without using Zhen Yuan, there were a lot of people who could block 5% of his power. Duguju and Snow Sword of Gojoseon were the most outstanding among them. Their control of power far surpassed the others. Control of power sounded like nothing much, but Yi Chen, who had truly entered this palace, understood that this was a path that would make people extremely terrifying, almost like gods. The more powerful one's body was, the harder it would be to control it. Therefore, without truly reaching this realm, one's control of power would be unstable. Duguju could explode with astonishing potential in a short period of time after being stimulated. However, after that, only a part of this potential would be left behind, while the other part would be hidden deep within his body. The Snow Sword of Gojoseon was the same. After the battle of life and death, Yi Chun had completely entered this palace. The manifestation of this realm was that the will contained within his cells was stronger than others, because he could control the will of these cells. Su Jing's original body was a golden dragon, and her original body's power was stronger than anyone else's. If she entered this palace, it was possible that her power would increase by dozens of times. Unfortunately, because her original body's power was too great, it would be thousands of times harder for her to reach this realm than others. Yi Chun guessed that humans should be the race that could most easily enter this realm. Without looking at Yi Chun turned around and left the martial arts field. Since the trouble had been resolved, there was no need for him to stay here and accept everyone's gazes. Yi Chun was about to stand up and continue fighting, but as soon as he stood up, his right arm and chest exploded. Blood filled the air, and his body fell to the ground again. Mr. Firebird was shocked by the scene in front of him. Even after Yi Chun had left the martial arts field, he didn't say anything, nor did he think of stopping him from leaving. This sword technique is too terrifying. It was just a simple sword fight, but it could injure Yi Chun to this extent. If it was a battle of life and death, wouldn't Yi Chun be dead by now? Killing with one strike. This seems to be the trademark of Mr. Jinghong. How exaggerated. The crowd discussed animatedly, their emotions surging. Terrifying. Uncle Lin took a deep breath, calming his turbulent emotions. Uncle Lin, what's so mysterious about this sword technique? To be honest, this was the first time Lan Xiner had seen such a thrilling duel between swordsmen. One strike to determine life and death, without any hesitation. Compared to her sister's sword technique, Yi Chun's sword technique was more direct, without any hesitation. It was also more dangerous. Uncle Lin shook his head and said, "It seems that I have underestimated him. I can't see anything special about this sword technique. All I know is that it contains the power of vibration." He was a little regretful that he had been a little rash before. Offending a swordsman with a bright future was not the right thing to do. Second miss, if you learn sword techniques from him, you might be able to reach the level of eldest Mississippi. However, he felt that there was still a chance to make up for it, and that was to let Lan Xiner get close to Yi Chun. Chapter 1033. Lan Xiner waited for 4 whole months. On this day, the door to Yi Chun's room was finally opened. Gongzi Yi. Lan Xiner welcomed Yi Chun as soon as he appeared in the living room. This time, Uncle Lin did not follow behind him. "Miss Xiner." Yi Chun nodded with a relaxed look on his face. Lan Xiner observed Yi Chun's expression and saw that he seemed to be in a good mood. She thought to herself, did his swordsmanship improve again? How terrifying. But this is great. Asking him for advice now should have a high chance of success. Lan Xiner gestured with her hand and said, "Gongzi Yi, I've already arranged a seat for you. Sit here." Okay. Lan Xiner probably had a favor to ask of him, and it was most likely related to swordsmanship. Yi Chun did not reject her. Kindness must be repaid. She let him board the blue leaf, which was a favor, even though she had accepted a fee. After eating and drinking, Lan Xiner looked at Yi Chun with her big blue eyes. "Gongzi Yi, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you'll agree to it. Say it." Yi Chun waited for her to continue. "I want Gongzi Yi to teach me swordsmanship." Lan Xiner went straight to the point. Without changing his expression, Yi Chun said, "Everyone's swordsmanship has its own style. The profoundness it contains is also different. The fusion points are also very different. I don't dare to teach you, but I can give you some pointers. Before that, let's go to the training field. Show me your swordsmanship." Gongzi Yi agreed. Lan Xiner did not expect things to go so smoothly. "Let's go." Yi Chun stood up. Okay. Lan Xiner quickly stood up and led the way. On the training field, Lan Xiner performed the illusion swordsmanship and looked at Yi Chun. Yi Chun asked, "What's the name of this swordsmanship?" "Illusion swordsmanship." "Illusion swordsmanship. Nice name." Yi Chun continued, "Your illusion sword art contains the water profound and the light profound. Using the effect of water, you can make light refract or deflect to cover up the true location of your attack. However, you've been pursuing perfection too much, and you've neglected the practicality. There are some areas that don't need to be changed. If you change too much, it will not only waste your Jun Yuan, but also waste opportunities and reduce your lethality. Yi Chen's eyesight was very sharp. Lan Xin Er's illusory sword art could easily make people intoxicated, as if they were in a dream. If an ordinary sword artist encountered this sword art, they wouldn't even know how they died. However, ordinary sword artists were still ordinary sword artists. It didn't mean that all sword artists would be bewitched. On the contrary, a truly powerful sword artist would easily defeat Lan Xin by exploiting the flaws of the sword art. In other words, Lan Xin sword technique could only be used to bully the weak. Against the strong, she would lose very quickly. This was a sword technique that bullied the weak and feared the strong. Then how do we change it? Lan Xiner asked. Very easy. And I just need to practice for a while. There are some things that couldn't be conveyed with words. Normally, when a master taught his disciple, there were two steps. One was to teach by example, which meant that the master would first speak and then personally teach. Lan Xin nodded. Be careful. Illusory sword arts, first movement, illusory heart. Lan Xiner's greatsword was a light blue, top-grade greatsword. Its blade was extremely thin, like a blue stream of water. When it sliced through the air, it created circles of light blue ripples. Along with the appearance of the ripples, the position of the sword refracted, making it hard to tell which angle she was going to attack from. Yi Chen didn't use force to break the technique, since that would be meaningless. He took out the demon slaughtering sword and pointed it at the center of the ripples. Splash! It was like the sound of flowing water. The ripples were completely messed up, and so was Lan Xin's sword art. In the next second, Yi Chen's sword pierced through the messy ripples, and the tip of the sword was only a hair away from Lan Xin's forehead. The flaw of this move is that it isn't focused enough, and it changes too early. Actually, you can deal with changes by not changing. The moment you exchange blows with your opponent, you can create many changes. That way, even if your opponent discovers your flaw, he won't have time to deal with it and will instantly fall into a disadvantageous position. Yi Chen's own sword arts usually turned complicated into simple. This was because of his high level of sword arts, but it didn't mean that Yi Chen didn't know sword arts with many changes. Any set of sword arts actually had many changes, and within the changes, there would be more changes. However, no matter how many changes there were, it was just a process, and the goal was the same, to defeat the opponent. Is that so? Lan Xin's ordinary sword pierced over. Yi Chen raised his sword to meet the attack. Ding! The moment the two swords clashed, Lan Xin's sword art produced countless changes. Ripples spread out, enveloping Yi Chen. Not bad. You seem to have learned it long ago. Yi Chen stretched out his left hand, and two of his fingers clamped the tip of his opponent's sword. Lan Xin was shocked. Even her sister had to take the changes of this sword seriously, but Yi Chen could easily clamp it. My sister taught me this, but she could only modify the first move. She couldn't modify the second move, because she couldn't connect it with the rest. The illusory sword art only had two moves. The first was illusory heart, and the second was illusory dream. If she performed only one move, it wouldn't be complete. This was because this illusory sword art was a powerful sword art that Lan Xin had obtained from a mysterious mystic realm. It was called illusory heart, illusory dream. Due to the high cultivation difficulty of the illusory heart, illusory dream, Lan Xin had separated it into two moves. Although each move only had 1/10 of the essence, at least she could perform it. Don't worry, your sister couldn't modify the second move, because her modification of the first move wasn't thorough enough. The moment she fought with her opponent, her sword art would produce many changes. If her opponent blocked it, she could continue to produce many changes, and she could perform it endlessly. In this way, she would have finished accumulating power. The first move, Illusory Heart, was actually used to accumulate power for the second move, Illusory Dream. If she didn't accumulate enough power, she wouldn't be able to perform the second move. This was also why Lan Xer didn't use the first move that her sister had taught her, and still used her own first move. After all, only by performing 2 moves in a row would she be able to display the greatest power to deal with a stronger opponent. It was very difficult to produce so many changes in a row. However, it wasn't a problem for Yi Chun. If he used 100% of his power for the first attack, he would use 90% for the second attack, 80% for the third attack, and so on. This way, he could accumulate power and make his opponent tired. Under Yi Chun's guidance, Lan Xin finally completed the modification of the first move, Illusory Heart. She could produce the Illusory Heart 3 times in a row, although it wasn't perfect. Ding, ding, ding. On the martial arts field, Lan Xin stabbed at Yi Chun with her sword. After it was blocked by Yi Chun, ripples spread out, and the dreamy second sword stabbed at Yi Chun's right shoulder. Yi Chun's wrist shook, and the Devil Slayer's sword easily blocked the second sword. The ripples continued to spread, and the third sword came, stabbing at the center of Yi Chun's eyebrows. Each sword was faster and more dreamy than the one before. If it was another swordsman whose strength was not as strong as Yi Chun, but who was stronger than Lan Xin, he would have already been defeated. In such a short period of time, it wasn't important whether he could see the flaw or not. Illusory Dream. The third sword was blocked. The light blue sword in Lan Xin's hand drew a circle. As this circle formed, the light blue ripples that had yet to dissipate silently collapsed, turning into a misty blue rain that completely enveloped Yi Chun. This misty rain was dreamy and illusory. Even if he closed his eyes, he could feel the beauty that didn't exist in this world. It was as if this blue misty rain not only enveloped his body, but also his soul. However, who knew that hidden behind the blue misty rain was a fatal blue sword light? It blended into the misty rain and quietly approached. Chi! The blue misty rain separated, and the sword light collapsed. At the same time, another extremely sharp sword light burst forth, heading straight for Lan Xin's face. Lan Xin was so scared that she took 3 steps back. Yi Chun smiled, put away the Devil Slayer's sword, and said, "The first move is almost done. However, to perfect, it is not something that can be done in a day. It requires time and effort. Now, let's start with the second move." Yi Chun suddenly felt the blue leaf pause for a moment. "We've arrived at Firebird Planet." Lan Xin closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was a little annoyed. "We've arrived so quickly?" Yi Chun was a little surprised. He and Lan Xin had only stayed in the martial arts field for a dozen days. Adding the 3 months and 4 months before that, they had only been there for a total of 8 months. When the blue leaf began to travel through space, it was 600,000 light-years away from Firebird Planet. Lan Xin explained, "The speed of a heavenly monarch warship is 3 times that of a king warship. In 8 months, it is exactly 600,000 light-years. So that's how it is. May I know the price of a king warship and a heavenly monarch warship?" If he had enough source stones, Yi Chun wanted to buy a heavenly monarch warship. Lan Xin said, "Warships are divided into different sizes. From small to large, there are small warships, medium warships, and large warships. A small king warship costs about 3,000 to 5,000 source stones. A medium king warship costs 10,000 to 15,000 source stones. A large king warship costs 30,000 to 50,000 source stones. As for a heavenly monarch warship, the price is about 50 times that of a king warship. For example, a small heavenly monarch warship costs 150,000 to 200,000 source stones. A medium king warship costs 500,000 to 700,000 source stones. A large king warship costs 5 million to 2 million source stones." So expensive. Yi Chun was a little shocked. He naturally knew the value of source stones. It was not an exaggeration to say that 1 source stone was equivalent to tens of thousands of top-quality spirit stones. In this way, a small king warship would cost more than 100 million top-quality spirit stones. A small heavenly monarch warship would cost more than 5 billion top-quality spirit stones. It was an astronomical figure. Moreover, this blue leaf was a medium heavenly monarch warship, and its price was much higher than a small heavenly monarch warship, costing more than 15 billion top-quality spirit stones. That's natural. Above heavenly monarch warship is the Emperor warship. The cheapest small Emperor warship costs more than 30 million source stones. The defensive cover of an Emperor warship can withstand continuous attacks from 6th layer Heavenly Monarch. A peak Emperor warship can even withstand continuous attacks from 7th layer Life and Death King. Chapter 1034. The Firebird star was a large, light red star with a diameter of 27 million kilometers. Such a large star could be clearly seen even from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. The distance between the blue leaf and the Firebird star was only tens of thousands of kilometers. At a glance, the gigantic Firebird star filled one's line of sight. It was boundless. Besides the blue leaf, there were thousands of puppet battleships around it. Most of them were King-class battleships. There were small, medium, and large ones. Of course, there were also many Heavenly King battleships. There were at least 1 or 2 among the dozens of battleships. As for Emperor battleships, there was no need to think about them. The Firebird planet was just a small planet with life, so it was impossible for it to have an Emperor battleship. Begin decelerating. In the universe, there was very little resistance and friction. In the atmosphere, the resistance was very high. If they didn't decelerate, the entire blue leaf would burn up. After all, the Firebird planet was different from Elysium. In Elysium, once one's speed reached a certain level, they would directly enter the void. However, the space of the Firebird planet was the space of the universe. It was very stable. No matter how fast one was, it was impossible to enter the void. When one's speed reached a frightening level, the friction would be terrifying. In other words, regardless of whether it was a puppet battleship or a martial artist, they would not be able to increase their speed to the limit within the atmosphere of the Firebird planet. Even 1/10 of their speed would be enough. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Strong air currents assaulted the blue leaf, causing it to sway slightly. However, the blue leaf quickly adapted to the air currents of the Firebird planet and began to stabilize. Lon Xner explained to Yi Chun, the Firebird planet has very little ocean. 90% of the planet is made up of land, and most of the land is unsuitable for human habitation because earthquakes and volcanic eruptions often occur there. Only 30% of the land is suitable for human habitation. This 30% is divided into 3 continents. The largest is the Firebird continent, followed by the Flaming Wind continent, and then the Ironbone continent. My blue leaf family is located in the southeast of the Firebird continent. The Firebird planet seems to have a lot of metal mines. Through the hull of the blue leaf, Yichen's soul force radiated outwards. The ground below was filled with mines and miners. Every time a batch of ore was mined, a large puppet carriage would come forward to transport it. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Lon Xiner nodded. The Firebird star is a fire element star. Metal mines can be found on more than half of the continent. Every year, we have to transport a large amount of metal to other planets with life. Because of this, although the Firebird star is located at the edge, it is very lively. Tens of thousands of puppet battleships come and go. Most of them are here to buy metals. Of course, many of them are here to buy weapons. The weapon forging industry on the Firebird star is very prosperous. Every city has dozens of weapon forging shops. There are dozens of weapon forging shops in every city. Yichen could not help but be shocked. In Elysium, there were very few blacksmiths who could forge weapons. More than 99% of the weapons were passed down from ancient times. Yichen did not think that the weapons she was talking about were normal weapons. They were definitely weapons of the artifact level. Dozens of weapon forging shops in a city could not even be described as prosperous. Indeed, weapon forging is the main industry on the Firebird star, and weapon forging is only second to warriors. From low to high, there are low-rank blacksmiths, mid-rank blacksmiths, upper-rank blacksmiths, and the most noble extreme rank blacksmiths. An extreme rank blacksmith status is much higher than normal kings. Of course, to become an extreme rank blacksmith, one has to be at least at the Sea of Souls realm. While the two were talking, the blue leaf began to land. This was a huge city in the southeastern part of the Firebird continent. The walls of the entire city were built with a special kind of stone. The surface of the walls gave off a faint glow, and it seemed to have a pretty good defensive power. In the center of the city was a huge square. Hundreds of puppet warships were parked neatly in the square. This is the battleship parking area of our Blue Leaf family. Since a lot of people use battleships for business, we park them here instead of putting them away. Of course, these are all King-class battleships. Sky King-class battleships would not be left outside casually. The cabin door opened, and a group of people walked down from the Blue Leaf. "Second young miss, you are finally back." In the plaza, a group of people with the blue leaf symbol on their clothes were already waiting. The leader seemed to be a housekeeper, but his cultivation was not low at all. He was at the first sky of life and death realm. Lonixer said, "Housekeeper Lou, how is my sister now?" Still unconscious. Housekeeper Lou shook his head. Nodding, Lonixer said, "As long as it doesn't worsen, it's fine. I've already brought back the resurrection fruit. It can definitely cure sister." As she spoke, she turned around and looked at Yi Chun. "Mr. Yi, why don't you stay in my lawn family for a few days? After I cure my sister, I can take you to tour the Firebird planet." "No need. I'm used to being alone. In a strange place, it should be interesting to explore alone." "All right then." Although she had not spent a lot of time with Yi Chun, Lon Exen knew that once Yi Chun made up his mind, he would not change it. "Go on with your business. I will take a stroll in this city first." Waving his hand, Yi Chun walked toward the nearest street. "Second young miss, who is he?" Housekeeper Lu saw that Lon Exen seemed to care a lot about Yi Chun, so he asked. Lon Exen said, "A very powerful sword artist. Let's not talk about this anymore. Take me to see my sister." "All right." Before leaving, Housekeeper Lu sized up Yi Chun's back. "A very powerful sword artist? Young Master Firebird, are you letting him go just like that?" A young king beside young Master Firebird said. "Then what do you want?" Yi Chun did not say anything even though he had suffered a loss once. A swordsman like him would not be a nameless nobody. Maybe he was a genius from another planet. At that time, there would be others to entertain him. As for me, as long as I enter the fourth layer, I will have more or less confidence. There will be no need for me to cause trouble. Young Master Firebird did not want to immediately regain his dignity, nor did he want to rely on his family's power. This was the rule of a life star. In a battle between geniuses, relying on family's power would be a joke. Interesting. Although he had already left, young Master Firebird's voice still reached Yi Chun's ears. This city was called Blue Leaf City, which belonged to the Blue Leaf family. It occupied a vast area spanning 1,000 li. Just as Lon Exen had said, the Firebird planet was indeed a star with a well-developed weapon forging industry. Basically, every main street had a weapon shop that specialized in selling all kinds of weapons. Blue Leaf City had more than 200 weapon shops. Of course, Blue Leaf City was a big city in the Firebird planet. Ordinary cities would have dozens of weapon shops. Arriving at a weapon shop with a Blue Leaf logo, Yi Chun entered. The weapon shop was very spacious, with 5 floors in total. The first floor had the most of the low-grade artifacts, with all kinds of them. Just the low-grade artifacts on the counter alone numbered in the thousands. The second floor had mid-grade artifacts, while the third floor had upper-grade artifacts. The fourth floor had semi-extreme grade artifacts, and, according to the staff, the fifth floor had pseudo-extreme grade artifacts and extreme grade artifacts. However, extreme grade artifacts were extremely rare, and most of the time, they were out of stock. Arriving at the fourth floor, Yi Chun checked the prices. The lowest price for a semi-extreme grade artifact is 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones, and the highest is 5,000. It seems very cheap. The fourth floor and below all used extreme grade spirit stones as the unit of measurement. 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones would be equivalent to 5 million upper grade spirit stones. In Elysium, 5 million upper grade spirit stones would not be enough to buy a semi-extreme grade artifact. Compared to upper grade artifacts, the price of a semi-extreme grade artifact would be dozens or even 100 times higher. You're right. Although Elysium is huge, it is still not bigger than the universe. Some of the materials that are rarely seen in Elysium might be very common in the universe. Plus, the weapon forging industry here is too developed, which leads to the weapons being of high quality and low price. On the 5th floor, HM, the cheapest pseudo-extreme grade artifact costs 10 yuan stones. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of extreme grade spirit stones. The most expensive one is 50. There were dozens of pseudo-extreme grade artifacts, which was not a small amount. Unfortunately, there were only a few extreme grade artifacts, not even one. They had probably all been sold. What is the price of an extreme grade artifact on the Firebird planet? Yi Chun asked the shop assistant on the 5th floor. The shop assistant was very observant. Hearing Yi Chun's question, he immediately knew that he was not from the Firebird planet. So he said, extreme grade artifacts are very rare no matter where you go. Low extreme grade artifacts cost around 200 to 300 yuan stones. Mid-extreme grade ones cost 500 to 700 yuan stones, and high extreme grade ones cost 1,000 to 1,500 yuan stones. Above that, there are Sky King grade artifacts that cost more than 2,000 yuan stones. In other words, I could buy a mid-extreme grade artifact with the money I paid on the blue leaf. Yi Chun already had a rough idea of the purchasing power of yuan stones. According to Lon Xin, a large King grade battleship would cost more than 30,000 yuan stones. 10 of them would be 300,000 yuan stones. Even a normal Sky King grade battleship would cost 150,000 yuan stones. If I want to survive here, this amount of yuan stones is not enough. I have to think of other ways to earn more. Do you buy artifacts here? Yi Chun asked again. Of course. Coming to the counter, Yi Chun took out a pseudo-extreme grade sword and handed it to the shopkeeper. Good sword. It actually contains such a powerful destruction sword intent. The shopkeeper was shocked. How much? Normally, a pseudo-extreme grade artifact's price is between 10 to 50 yuan stones. This sword, I can give you 60 yuan stones. The shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. Yi Chun nodded. He did not really want to sell the sword. He just wanted to see if the sword he had made would be popular here. It seemed like it was not bad at all. Chapter 1035. With 60 source stones in hand, Yi Chun did not leave immediately. After thinking for a while, he pulled out the demon slaughtering sword from his waist. What about this sword? This is a top-quality high-level sword. The shopkeeper's eyesight was very sharp. With one glance, he could tell that this was an extremely rare top-quality high-level sword. Generally speaking, low-level top-quality swords were often sold in weapon shops and were considered expensive luxury goods. Middle-level top-quality swords would only be sold once every few months, and as for top-quality high-level swords, one might not even be seen in 3 to 5 years. Some weapon shops would open their entire lives without having a top-quality high-level sword for sale. But it's a pity. The shopkeeper suddenly shook his head. What's a pity? Yi Chun asked. The shopkeeper looked at Yi Chun. This sword's most precious material should be the crimson essence, but the person who forged it did not use the crimson essence's power to its limit, and it did not completely fuse with the other materials. I once saw a sword that contained the crimson essence, and that sword felt as if the spirit and flesh were one. This sword is still lacking a little, and correspondingly, that sword's grade was also higher than this one. It was a Heavenly King grade sword. So that's how it is. Yi Chun nodded. In the entire Elysium, he was the only one who could forge top-quality swords, and it felt like he was building a car behind closed doors. On the other hand, on Firebird Planet, the weapon forging industry was unprecedentedly developed, and they naturally sought perfection. As if knowing that Yi Chun did not really want to sell this sword, the shopkeeper returned the demon slaughtering sword to Yi Chun and said, although the forging of this sword is lacking a little, the material is not bad, and it contains a powerful destruction sword intent. Its value far surpasses other top-quality, high-level swords. I estimate it to be around 2,500 source stones. This was not a low price. Under normal circumstances, top-quality high-level treasures were worth between 1,000 to 1,500, so 2,500 source stones was equivalent to two top-quality high-level treasures. Leaving the weapon shop, Yichen walked towards the general store. He needed a map of Firebird Planet. Young Master, our maps here are divided into many grades. The lowest is a paper map, and the highest is a star shrinking device. The general store shopkeeper introduced. Star shrinking device? Let me see. Yichen was a little curious. Wait a moment, young master. The shopkeeper walked into the room behind the counter. When he came out, he was holding a crystal ball in his hand. The crystal ball was fixed on a black square block of wood, sparkling and translucent. This is the star shrinking machine? Yichen sensed a mysterious fluctuation from it. That's right, young master. You can inject a strand of your soul power into it, the shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. After nodding slightly, a strand of soul force emerged from between Yichen's eyebrows and silently entered the star shrinking device. In the next moment, an image appeared in Yichen's mind. It was the miniature of a pale red star, exactly the same as the Firebird star. As he concentrated, he discovered that this Firebird star could be enlarged. First, it was the Firebird continent, then the southeast part of the Firebird continent, then Blue Leaf City. Finally, the entire structure of Blue Leaf City was displayed clearly. He could even see the location of the street he was on. What a marvelous technique. Yichen sighed. The shopkeeper asked curiously, "What? Is this young master's first time seeing a star-shrinking device?" "That's right. My hometown is in a certain world, not a star with life." Yichen explained. Indeed. Star-shrinking devices can only be found on stars with life. The shopkeeper smiled, indicating that he understood. How much is this star-shrinking device? Yichen decided to buy it. The star-shrinking devices of the Firebird star are all 10 yuan stones. It's the same everywhere. Young master can rest assured. It's not that expensive. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of supreme great spirit stones. For life and death kings, it was still acceptable, but for Sea of Soul realm experts, it was too expensive. Here, handing over 10 yuan stones, Yichen put away the star shrinking device. Excuse me, do you have any supreme grade sword forging books or books introducing supreme grade metals? After solving the problem of the map, Yichen turned his attention to the sword forging art. His sword forging art had many flaws and was not perfect. In fact, the sword forging art he had obtained in Gemstone Islands only touched upon a trace of supreme grade sword forging art. Being able to forge supreme grade swords was entirely due to Yichen's comprehension of sword Dao and powerful perception. If it were another sword forging genius, it would be difficult to forge a pseudo-supreme grade sword. Yes, but a lot. Moreover, the price is not cheap. The shopkeeper said, "I'll take as many as you have." Yichen's expression became spirited. Soon, the shopkeeper took out a small chest and opened it, revealing jade strips inside. "Young master, these are all top-grade sword forging technique jade strips. After pouring your soul energy into them, the sword forging technique knowledge in the jade strips will enter your mind. After using it once, the jade strips will become useless." The function of jade strips was to prevent knowledge from leaking, just like profound sense martial skills. How much is one strip? 1 yuan stone. Do you mind if I look through a few first? Don't worry, I'll pay for the ones I've looked through. No problem. Taking out a jade strip, Yichen poured his soul power inside. Supreme Grade Fire Attribute Sword Forging Art. He took out another one. Supreme Grade Earth Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Water Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Metal Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Qinyang Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Extreme Sword Forging Art. After reading through 7 or 8 jade scrolls in one breath, Yichen had a feeling of being enlightened. The sword forging knowledge inside was not very detailed. It was just the basics, and some parts were even unclear. If it were a normal top-rank sword forger, they would be completely lost. However, Yi Chen's understanding of the sword Dao had already reached an unimaginable level. Even the tiniest bit of extreme rank sword forging knowledge would be able to gradually improve him. Therefore, this extreme rank sword forging knowledge was undoubtedly a priceless treasure for him. All right, I'll take them all. A total of 24 yuan stones. The shopkeeper's face was full of smiles. To be honest, these top-grade sword forging technique jade strips weren't some kind of secret that couldn't be passed on to others. They were merely the most basic knowledge. If one thought that buying a top-grade sword forging technique jade strip would allow one to forge a top-grade treasured sword, that would be the ravings of a fool. It was like giving a peerless secret cultivation technique. Without the guidance of a master, one wouldn't know how to cultivate. Everything had to be supported by the details. True supreme-grade sword forging art wasn't for sale. Those famous sword forging masters wouldn't pass down their secret sword forging art to others. Even when they taught their disciples, they would only pass down a bit of it from time to time. Unless the disciple was their direct disciple, the majority of the disciples wouldn't be able to learn it. Naturally, the shopkeeper was happy to sell a set of supreme-grade sword forging art. Gongzi, you've taken care of quite a lot of my business this time. I'll give you this set of books introducing metal materials. The shopkeeper took out a huge box and placed it in front of Yi Chen. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Just like the Supreme Grade Sword Forging Art, the books on Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction were categorized into different categories. Many thanks. Yi Chen accepted it without hesitation. Compared to the other items he had bought, these books weren't worth much. Otherwise, the shopkeeper wouldn't be so generous as to give him a set. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Yi Chen had not only digested the knowledge of 24 Supreme Grade Sword Forging Art, but he had also finished reading all the books introducing metal materials. It's time to purchase some Supreme Grade Sword Forging Art. Forging swords could strengthen Yi Chen's foundation. The reason why Yi Chen's sword Dao could advance by leaps and bounds was due to the countless swords he had forged. There were many things that one could comprehend by analogy, and the same went for sword forging. After all, it wasn't easy to comprehend martial arts and profoundness. By the end of the day, Yi Chen had purchased a large amount of supreme-grade sword forging art. Just the most common star iron alone cost Yi Chen tens of millions of jin. Of course, although it looked heavy, it was only the size of a small fake mountain. Supreme-grade sword forging art was extremely mysterious. Although it didn't look big, a piece of metal the size of a fist weighed thousands of jin. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to forge a supreme-grade sword forging art that could change its size at will. It's a pity that I don't have enough primal stones. Yi Chen had spent more than half of the primal stones he had. Fortunately, the supreme-grade sword forging art was enough for him to forge hundreds of supreme-grade sword forging art. Even if they were all inferior supreme-grade sword forging art, they would still be worth 200,000 to 300,000 primal stones. However, Yi Chen knew that this was only in theory. With Yi Chen's current experience of forging one supreme-grade sword forging art, it would be good if he had a 10% success rate. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't even have a 1% success rate. No matter what they did, they would have to pay the tuition fee first. This was also the reason why there were very few solitary supreme-grade sword forgers. Out of 100, there would only be 1 or 2. Most of the supreme-grade sword forgers had the support of super families and sections. Normal families and sects wouldn't have so many primal stones to spend. The price of raising a supreme-grade sword forger was very shocking. Without primal stones, even if you were a peerless genius, you would still have to stand aside. Correspondingly, on the Firebird planet, those with supreme-grade sword forging art would have a very prestigious status, much higher than normal kings. Many powerful kings would fight to send gifts to them, begging them to forge supreme-grade sword forging art. Looks like I should sell the 10 demons battleships. I can't use them anyway. The demons' battleships were very valuable, and it would be too wasteful to keep them. Once they were used, the upper echelons of the demons might notice them. Maybe I can sell them to her. Yi Chun thought of Lan Shiner. Chapter 1036. In the center of Blue Leaf City, there was a manor that looked like a small city. The manor was divided into 5 parts: east, west, south, and center. 2 young women were sparring in the training field of the southern manor. Of these 2 women, one was Lan Shiner, and the other looked a bit like Lan Shiner. However, her face was more angular, and she looked very cold. This was Lan Shiner's older sister, Lan Shiner. She was ranked 2nd among Planet Firebird's 10 heroes. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of swords clashing rang out incessantly. Sparks flew everywhere, and when the aftershocks spread out, mysterious ripples appeared around the martial arts field. These ripples had the effect of absorbing the aftershocks, so although the fight between the 2 seemed to be extremely intense, the damage caused was rather limited. Sister, be careful. Illusion. A blue misty rain burst out and enveloped Lan Shiner. With a flick of her wrist, the light blue sword in Lan Shiner's hand was like a flowing spring. It merged with the blue misty rain and attacked Lan Shiner. Lan Xian had a hard time dealing with the previous illusory heart. The only reason she was able to do so was because Lan Xian's swordplay wasn't very proficient. She hadn't reached the stage where her heart and sword were connected. Even so, Lan Xian was shocked. 5 years ago, in terms of swordplay, Lan Xian was much weaker than her. She even helped her modify the illusory heart. Could it be that Lan Xian had improved so much in the past 5 years that her swordplay was catching up to her? The illusory heart suppression on her was too great. Once the illusory heart appeared, Lan Shiner could no longer reverse the situation. However, at that moment, a powerful sword force exploded from her body. She used force to break Lan Shiner's sword light. Sister, the power you used just now was more than mine. Lan Shiner smiled. When they sparred, they always used the same amount of power. It was just swordsmanship. You win this time. Lan Shiner let out a breath of turbid air and smiled. Putting away her sword, Lan Shiner said, I'm satisfied to be able to beat you by 1 move. Next time, let's have a proper spar. The so-called sparring was to test each other's sword techniques. Lan Xian didn't think that her sister would lose to her in a real fight. Her opponent could easily disrupt her sword techniques in the middle of the fight, instead of allowing her to use them freely. Okay, Lan Xian nodded and asked curiously, is this the result of your 5 years? No, on the way back, a powerful swordsman taught me. Although we've only been together for a dozen days, I feel that my understanding of sword skills has deepened. Lan Shiner thought of Yi Chun, a powerful swordsman. Could he be an elder? Lan Xian subconsciously thought that the person teaching her was a famous swordsman with a lot of seniority. This kind of thing happened often. Some seniors would occasionally teach young people they liked and even take them in as disciples. Prince Jinghong, who was ranked 1st among Planet Firebird's 10 heroes, was taken in as a disciple by an Emperor-class swordsman. Big sister guessed wrong again. The one who taught me was a young swordsman. He looked even younger than me, probably only 36 or 37 years old. Lan Shiner seemed to enjoy seeing her sister being defeated. She blinked her eyes. A 36 or 37-year-old swordsman taught you. Lan Xian was really shocked. 36 or 37 years old was indeed too young for their realm. Planet Firebird's 10 heroes were all over 40 years old. Don't underestimate this gap of 3 or 4 years. It was very likely that their strength had increased tenfold. It seemed that only those geniuses on the Heavenly King list could be this powerful at this age. Lan Xian couldn't help but be extremely curious about the young swordsman her sister spoke of. Tell me about him, Yi Zichen said. Lan Xian said, okay. Lan Shiner didn't keep her in suspense. She told her everything that had happened to Yi Chun on the Blue Leaf. When she talked about how Yi Chun had defeated Yi Chun in 1 move, a strange light flashed in Lan Xian's eyes. According to her sister's description, she guessed that Yi Chun had used the vibration sword art. However, Being able to knock away Yu Chen's sword and shatter his arm without using true yuan meant that the other's research on the power of vibration had reached a terrifying level. You're saying that you only used the illusion sword art once, and he already pointed out the flaw and modified it? Lan Xiner couldn't help but blurt out. Lan Xiner nodded. That's right. At that time, his suggestion was the same as yours. But when I told him that the modified illusion heart and illusion dream couldn't be combined, he immediately raised his opinion. He said that your modification wasn't thorough enough and didn't get to the point. In the next 10 days, a new illusion heart appeared. Amazing. I really want to meet him. An intense battle intent surged in Lan Xiner's eyes. As a sword artist, there was no one who didn't want to fight against a powerful sword artist. She had fought against Graceful Prince dozens of times, but the latter had an emperor-grade sword artist guiding him. She was not his opponent at all. Moreover, Graceful Prince's cultivation base was also higher than hers, having reached the 5th layer of life and death realm. He occupied a spot on the Heavenly King list, although his ranking was quite low. I also want to meet him. The illusion heart has been modified, but the illusion dream has not. Only after these two moves are modified will I be able to see the true essence of this mysterious sword art. Lan Xiner sighed. Second lady, they're the young sword artist outside looking for you. He asked me to inform you. Suddenly, a guard ran in and said loudly, Young sword artist? Is it young Master Yi? Lan Xiner's eyes brightened as she said, Is he wearing blue clothes? Yes. The guard nodded. Bring him here, quickly. Soon, Yi Chen arrived under the guard's lead. Young Master Yi. Lan Xiner went up to greet him. Lady Xiner, Yi Chen is here to visit. I hope I didn't disturb you. Yi Chen had a smile on his face. While speaking, he sized up the elegant lady beside Lan Xiner. And this is my sister Lan Xiner. Sister, he is the Yi Chen I mentioned. Lan Xiner introduced the two. I'm Yi Chen. Nice to meet you. Yi Chen nodded. Lan Xiner, I've heard about you from Exile. Thank you for helping her modify her sword art. Lan Xiner nodded and sized up Yi Chen. Yi Chen, dressed in blue and carrying a sword, gave people a quiet and slightly mysterious feeling. There was no sword aura on his body, but it was impossible to ignore. It seemed that he could cut the sky and earth with a wave of his sleeve and walk freely in the starry sky. Of course, this was purely Lan Xiner's subconscious feeling. Ordinary swordsmen couldn't sense this. Lady Xiner is talented and intelligent. I just gave her some pointers. Yi Chen could see that Lan Xiner was more than 10 times stronger than Lan Xiner. Whether it was sword aura, sword essence, or aura, they were all much stronger. Young Master Yi, this way please. I'll make you some tea. On the small lake next to the training field, there was a pavilion. Lan Xiner invited Yi Chen to the pavilion. Taking a sip of tea, Yi Chen said directly, Lady Xiner, I came here this time to ask you for a favor. If you think it's too troublesome, then don't force yourself. What is it? As long as I can do it, I will definitely agree. Lan Xiner asked, Can you help me sell these demons' battleships? Yi Chen took out a demon's battleship from his storage ring. It was 700 to 800 meters long and floated above the lake. Large puppet battleships. They belonged to the demons. Lan Xiner couldn't help but say, Indeed, I took this demon's battleship from the demons. However, the aura on it is too obvious, and it could easily attract the attention of the demons. So I want to sell it. Lan Xiner laughed. It's a piece of cake. We humans and the demons have always been enemies. Getting their demons' battleships is normal. These demons' battleships can be modified to remove the demonic aura on them, so the demons won't be able to recognize them. You said that there are more of them? 9 more. Yi Chen nodded. Hiss. Lan Xiner and Lan Xiner exchange a look. Taking 10 large demons' battleships in one go was not an easy task. Usually, when a large demon's battleships appeared, the demon army would definitely appear. There would be a lot of demon kings inside. So, how would they get 10 demons' battleships? Of course, they wouldn't get to the bottom of this. This was someone else's secret. These demons' battleships are large king-class battleships. Their price is between 30 to 50,000, but not lower than 30,000. I can only give you 300,000 primeval stones for 10 of them. I'll give you the rest after I sell them. Lon Sheener said. No problem. He was already very satisfied that she was willing to help him with this. Where can I buy a Heavenly King-class battleship? Yichen asked again. Lon Sheener answered for Lon Sheener. The Flaming Bird continent has 3 main cities. Only the main cities have Heavenly King-class battleships for auction. As far as I know, in 3 months, Flaming City will hold a large-scale auction. At that time, there will definitely be a Heavenly King-class battleship. Flaming City? Yi Chun had already memorized the names of all the cities on the Flaming Bird planet. Flaming City was more than 3 million miles away from Lanya City. Next, Yi Chun handed the 10 demons battleships to Lon Sheener. Lon Sheener withdrew 300,000 primeval stones from the Lanya family and gave it to Yi Chun. Young Master Yi, I'm very interested in your sword skills. I wonder if I can spar with Xian. After the business was done, Lon Sheener asked Yi Chun for a spar. All right. Yi Chun was very straightforward. After all, Lon Sheener had only helped him once. No matter what, he had to give her sister some face. This way, please. Lon Sheener didn't expect Yi Chun to be so straightforward. He gestured with his hand. When they arrived at the training field, Yi Chun and Lon Sheener stood dozens of meters apart. As for Lon Sheener, she stood far away, holding her breath. I wonder how intense this spar will be. Please. Lon Sheener pulled out her red sword. Her eyes sharpened. Even from a distance, Lon Sheener felt a prickling sensation on her skin. She had experienced her sister's strength more than once or twice. Chapter 1037. Go all out. Yichen did not pull out the demon-slaying sword. He merely stood there, and a faintly discernible sword aura locked onto Lon Sheener. It was different from other people's sword aura. Yichen's sword aura contained softness within hardness and hardness within softness. Under the lock of this sword aura, Lon Sheener felt a subtle sense of fear for the first time, and her hair stood on end. What level of sword aura is this? Lon Sheener knew that if she did not make a move now, she would not have the courage to do so. Yichen's strength was beyond her imagination. The Yi Chun that her sister Lon Xiner spoke of was not as strong as the Yi Chun in front of her. No, it was not even half as strong. Facing Yi Chun, she felt that she was full of flaws and was full of danger. Wind God leaves. Lon Sheener immediately used her ultimate move. Her figure flashed, and a blazing red light slashed out. This red light seemed overbearing, but in reality, it was extremely agile and ethereal. It was like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Any breeze could change its trajectory, making it difficult for the opponent to guard against it. Good move, but it's better to be more pure. With a ding sound, sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chun blocked the sword. Hurricane Divine Fire. Using the power of Yi Chun's sword, Lon Sheener's body shot up into the sky. In the next moment, she swooped down in an even more ferocious manner. Her red sword swept out, and a strong scarlet hurricane swept across the world. It was powerful, but if one really thought that this move was overbearing and rough, they would be wrong. Yichen clearly felt that the scorching hurricane's sword aura contained countless vortexes. They grew and multiplied endlessly, advancing wave after wave. Once one fell into this hurricane's sword aura, they could only passively take a beating as if they were trapped in a swamp. Good move. Yichen didn't retreat, but advanced instead. His figure flickered, directly cutting into the hurricane sword chi. However, what made Lon Sheener alarmed was that Yi Chen's figure was like a ghost that didn't seem like a human's body. There was no gap in between, and he forcibly passed through. As he passed through, the hurricane sword chi was like a wave that had been split apart, spraying to the sides. Ding! Metal and iron clashed, and the red sword in Lon Sheener's hand flew out of her hand. Then, Yi Chen's sword was pointed at the space between her eyebrows. It was clean and efficient, without any hesitation. Lon Xiner, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Her sister had been defeated without any suspense. Compared to her sister's sword technique, Yi Chen hadn't used any powerful sword technique at all. He seemed to have completely seen through her sister's sword technique's flaw and then magnified it to the limit. Lan Xian's expression changed several times as her treasured sword was knocked away. Clang! Sheathing the Demon Slayer sword, Yi Chan said, "There are actually no flaws in your sword technique. However, in the end, everything has to be simplified. You should develop in the direction of simplicity and not rigidly adhere to the form. Once you achieve the goal of simplifying and returning to complexity, you will have new insights. There is no difference between complexity and simplicity. One was acquired, and the other was innate. They were used to verify each other. When your sword technique was incomparably simple, it could move towards complexity and change. When it reached the limit of complexity, it could become simple and then continue to be complex. It was an endless cycle with almost no end. Of course, the further you went, the more difficult it would be and the more powerful it would be. Destroying the world and creating the world would only take a single thought. Please guide me on my sword technique. Out of the expectations of Yi Chun and Lan Xen, Lan Xian was suddenly bent down and begged Yi Chun for guidance. She was not her sister, Lan Xen. After sparring with Yi Chun, she knew how terrifying Yi Chun was. Perhaps in the previous exchange, he had only revealed a trace of his ability. The killer move, Hurricane God Fire, was invulnerable in her eyes. Even Prince Jinghong had to rely on absolute strength and speed to break it. However, in the eyes of Yi Chun, it was so fragile that it could not withstand a single blow. The mysterious swordsman in front of her had completely conquered Lan Xian's heart. She knew that if she did not ask Yi Chun for guidance today, she would regret it for the rest of her life. Sister, Lan Xen had just recovered from the shock, and her expression immediately froze. In her impression, her sister was a person who looked tough on the outside but was soft on the inside. She was swift and decisive, sometimes very stubborn and very opinionated. She had never thought that her sister would throw away her pride and ask Yi Chun for guidance. Yi Chun smiled bitterly. The other party's action had stunned him for a moment. Forget it. It doesn't matter if it's one less or one more. Does your Lanya family have a place for forging swords? Yi Chun did not reply directly. Yes, our Lanya family is a family of swordsmiths. We have dozens of swordsmithing courtyards. I will arrange the best one for you, Lan Xen said. Thank you. During this period, if I have time, I will come here to give you some pointers. Yi Chun could not waste his time on the two of them. He could only occasionally give them pointers. You agree? Lan Xian's face lit up. The swordsmithing courtyard that Lan Xen arranged for Yi Chun was one of the three great courtyards of the Lanya family, the Earthfire Courtyard. Of course, the courtyard was mainly used for resting. The place for forging swords was 1,000 meters below the courtyard. The Firebird star was a fire-attributed star. The temperature and purity of the earth fire were very high. After being processed by the flame gathering array, the flame amplification array, the flame purification array, and the flame condensation array, the flames produced were as red as blood. They could melt almost any top-grade metal without any effort. Ding ding dang dang. Having found a suitable place, Yi Chun started to forge the great sword day and night, without sleeping or resting. However, Yi Chun did not just casually forge top-grade swords. He planned to start with top-grade swords of the metal and water elements. Because he had already perfected the metal and water profound, the success rate should be much higher. The higher the success rate, the more profit he would make after recovering his costs. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Yi Chun walked out of the scorching hot ground. What made him dumbfounded was that Lan Xian and Lan Xen were sitting on the grass in the courtyard. From their posture, it seemed like they had been sitting there for many days. What are you doing? Yi Chun said helplessly. Lan Xian said seriously, waiting for young Master Yi to come out. When I come out, I will inform you. There is no need to waste a lot of time here, Lan Xian said. If we don't even have this little bit of patience, we are not worthy of young Master Yi's pointers. As for wasting time, I don't think so. Waiting will make our hearts more peaceful. It is not like we will not gain anything. Then let's begin. Miss Xian, let's start with you. Yi Chen promised to help Lan Xian or modify the dream. Okay, Lan Xian, I nodded excitedly. This modification took 3 days. This was not because the modification of the dream was difficult, but because Lan Xian could not understand Yi Chen's modification. Fortunately, Lan Xian had been training with her. After 3 days, Lan Xian gradually mastered the new dream and improved significantly. When it came to Lan Xian, Yi Chen did not help her modify the sword moves. The other party's sword moves were self-created and could not compare to the ancient sword techniques that Lan Xian had obtained from the mysterious mystic realm. No matter how good the modification was, it would only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. If the modification was too good, it would become Yi Chen's sword moves and not Lan Xian's. Therefore, Yi Chen only pointed at Lan Xian's weak points. For example, the most basic swordsmanship. Do not underestimate the basic swordsmanship. Any powerful swordsmanship was made up of the basic swordsmanship. It was just like the entire world was made up of energy particles. The better the basic swordsmanship, the better the foundation. It was like a skyscraper. If the foundation was not solid, the skyscraper would have safety problems. It cannot be built higher or stronger. Before entering the sword world, Yi Chen's basic swordsmanship had already reached perfection. No one in Elysium could compare to him. After entering the sword world and seeing countless kinds of swordsmanship, Yi Chen's basic swordsmanship had reached the pinnacle. It was not an exaggeration to say that even the swordsmanship of the Snow Sword of Gojoseon and the Star Sword King was very immature in Yi Chen's eyes. At the beginning, Lan Xian did not think much of Yi Chen's pointers. She thought that he was looking down on her. But after one day, Lan Xian was completely convinced. The ordinary basic swordsmanship in Yi Chen's hands was like a god. It was to the point of turning something rotten into something magical. For example, when she did not use any true yuan, will, or sword power, a simple stab was 10 times stronger than hers. It was clearly the same amount of power. Basic swordsmanship can allow you to truly understand the way of the sword and understand how to control the sword energy. Don't think that comprehending the profoundness is everything. In fact, profoundness is also a way of using power. Before forging the sword, Yi Chen said a sentence that was easy to understand to Lan Xian. As for how much she understood, that was not something he could control. Sister, what do you think young Master Ye's background is? Why do I feel like he knows everything? There are no secrets in his eyes. Looking at Yi Chen's back, Lan Xian came over. Lan Xian said, there are countless geniuses in the universe like stars in the sky. There are also many geniuses of the way of the sword. There will always be a few geniuses who walk in front of everyone else and understand mysteries that others do not. Young Master Yi is one of them. Time flowed like water. There was no turning back. It was already the last few days of the 3rd month. In the depths of the Earth Fire Courtyard. In 3 months, I've scrapped 4 swords and forged 2 defective ones. However, I've also succeeded in forging 2 swords. 2 swords floated in front of Yi Chen. One was gold with a tinge of blue, filled with a masculine golden aura. The other was blue with a tinge of ink. The body of the sword seemed to contain a vast ocean. When forging a supreme-grade treasure sword, even a supreme-grade swordsmith's success rate was not very high. A 50% success rate was already a top supreme-grade swordsmith. A 30% success rate was a rather famous supreme-grade swordsmith. Although Yi Chen's talent in sword forging was not inferior to his comprehension of the way of the sword, his foundation was still shallow. His success rate was only above 10%. The treasure sword with a tinge of gold with a tinge of blue was a metal attribute sword. It was a low-grade supreme-grade sword. Yi Chen had named it Star Cutter, meaning that it was unstoppable and tyrannical. The sword with a tinge of ink with a tinge of blue was a water attribute sword. It had reached the mid-grade supreme grade. Its name was Vast Ocean. The sword power was vast and endless. Chapter 1038. On the ground, Lan Xian and Lan Xian were both practicing their swordsmanship. Sir Yi, seeing Yi Chen come out, the two stopped. You've both improved a lot in the past 3 months. Miss Xian Your swordsmanship is more decisive than before, and your sword intent will break through to level 7 soon. Miss Xian, your basic swordsmanship is improving every day. If you have another 3 months, you should be able to reach a higher level. Next, you'll have to rely on your own hard work. Relying on others can only last for a while. Yi Chen's eyes were as gentle as water. He swept his gaze over the two, as if all their secrets were no longer secrets to him. Sir Yi, are you going to Fire City? Lon Sheener asked. I've been on the Firebird planet for a while now. It's time to look around. I hope to see a new you the next time we meet. Goodbye. After saying this, Yi Chen directly rose into the sky and flew out of the city. He really left just like that. Lon Sheener pursed her lips. Don't worry. The next time we meet, Lon Sheener, will improve to a level that will shock you. Lon Sheener murmured with a determined look. The greater the pressure, the greater the improvement. The pressure on a planet with life is still too small. In the sky outside the city, Yi Chen thought to himself. Lon Sheener and Lon Sheener's talent was not much weaker than Elysium's Dugaju and the others. However, in the same realm, their battle strength was barely satisfactory. In Elysium, the alien race's calamity was everyone's nightmare. In order to survive the calamity and defeat the invasion of the demons and the evil spirit race, everyone was desperately evolving. This kind of humiliation and pressure made them continuously become stronger and break through their limits. Swoosh! His protective true yuan rubbed against the atmosphere as Yi Chen flashed into the sky like a spark. Yuan Qing, have you heard? 3 months ago, the Rising Sun Sword King, Yu Chen, was defeated by a mysterious swordsman on the blue leaf. It said that he was defeated with one sword. The light red sky was as brilliant as fire. 2 figures flew side by side, their speed exceeding 1,000 times the speed of sound. The one who spoke was a young man on the left, with a shallow scar on his cheek. That's right. Although Yu Chen is a bit weaker than us and can't be ranked among the Firebird planet's 10 heroes, he is not a pushover. Defeating him with one sword strike is not an easy task. The bald youth on the right nodded. I'm not surprised that Yu Chen was defeated. What I'm concerned about is why young Master Firebird didn't make a move. Could it be that he's afraid of trouble? That makes sense. Don't be arrogant. However, that is just his appearance. Otherwise, he wouldn't be ranked above the 2 of us, said the scarred youngster with a smile. If there was a knowledgeable person here, they would definitely recognize these 2 youths as Luo Yinkong and Yuan Qing, who were ranked 6th and 8th among the Firebird planet's 10 heroes. Although Luo Yinkong's strength was only ranked 6th, his Qinggong was only below young Master Jinghong's, and Yuan Qing's hammer technique was exceptionally domineering. He was known as the Shattered Star King. Perhaps, young Master Firebird. One day I will defeat him. Clenching his fists, Yuan Qing said, Hee, we can talk about the future in the future. Let's speed up. This time, the Fire City's ranking meeting was actually held 3 days in advance. Luckily, we got the news early. Luo Yinkong smiled and increased his speed. Indeed, on the Firebird planet, one speed can only be increased to 1% without any resistance. The Starfire continued to increase its speed, its outer layer burning with pure flames. In Elysium, once one's speed reached a certain level, one would be able to escape into the void, and the friction with the air would not be as strong. However, on the Firebird planet, no matter how fast one's speed was, one would not be able to escape into the void. This led to the higher one's speed, the greater the friction. Every time one increased their speed, the pressure they had to bear would multiply, and the consumption of Jinyuan would also multiply. The speed gradually slowed down, maintaining a speed of 1,500 times the speed of sound. Yichen did not want to waste too much Jinyuan. He could fight with people for 3 days and 3 nights, or even 7 days and nights. However, he had a feeling that if he kept increasing his speed, his Jinyuan would be exhausted within 2 hours. This was an extremely frightening consumption rate, and it was also the law of the universe. The faster one's speed was, the more kinetic energy they would need. Even if he was proficient in the space profound, he could only slow down this rate. Fire City was one of the three main cities of the Firebird continent. It was different from the other cities. Flying was prohibited in the sky above Fire City, and everyone had to enter the city through the main gate. This was because the city lord of this city was the Leaf Flame Mystic Emperor. In the universe, if one wanted to become an emperor, their cultivation base had to be at the seventh sky of life and death realm, and the Leaf Flame Mystic Emperor was a seventh sky of life and death realm warrior. On the street outside the east gate of Fire City, there were countless figures of people. The number of people could not be counted. We're finally here. Luo Yinkong and Yuan Qing landed on the street and walked toward the east gate. Suddenly, the two raised their heads at the same time, looking at the sky. That is, swoosh. A tall figure descended. His figure was extremely heavy, giving off the feeling of a mountain or a vast ocean. However, when he landed on the ground, he felt as light as a feather, landing without a sound. It was as if the weight of his body had disappeared, and it was just an illusion. As this person landed, the surrounding noise disappeared completely, replaced by a deathly stillness. The people in the vicinity felt as if their bodies had gone numb, unable to move. Even moving a finger was difficult. Their eyes fixated on the descending figure as cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. What a frightening blade chi! Luo Yinkong and Yuan Qing's pupils dilated as they remained motionless. The person who came was very young. He looked to be in his 20s. His appearance was cold and extraordinary. He had a head of wild black hair. His eyebrows were like knives, and his eyes were like knives. His fluttering clothes gave people a kind of domineering sharpness when he drew his knife. His figure was tall and straight. He was more than 2 meters tall. Standing there, he was like a saber that could support heaven and earth. Lifeless blade artist, Lung Fifan. Luo Yinkong uttered these words with great difficulty. Crack! All of a sudden, Luo Yinkong's entire body seemed to have been electrocuted. His heart stopped beating, his blood stopped flowing, and his eyes became sluggish. All of this was caused by a casual glance from Lung Fifan. Too powerful. Is this the lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan from the King list? In the distance, many people looked over. Lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan came from the giant blade star. He was 44 years old this year, and was at the fourth sky of life and death realm, ranked 7th on the Heavenly King list. He was a horrifying genius with a peerless talent for blade Dao. His blade arts were said to have reached the level of lifeless and deathless. Under one blade strike, even ghosts and gods would find it hard to escape. As for the King list, it was a monster list. In order to enter this list, one had to be under 50 years old and be a genius among geniuses. This list only had 100 spots. Anyone on the list had an extremely frightening strength. Among the 10 heroes of the Firebird Star, only the first-ranked Jinghong Prince had entered the list. However, even with his cultivation base at the 5th sky of life and death realm, he was only ranked 94, completely incomparable to Lung Fifan. Lung Fifan had once been praised by an expert who had surpassed the 7th sky of life and death realm, saying that he was one of the geniuses who had the highest hope of reaching the peak of Blade Dao. Therefore, everyone recognized that within the same realm, Lung Fifan was almost invincible. Even the top 6 monstrous geniuses on the King list could only suppress him with their cultivation base. Such a frightening blade artist had actually come to the Firebird Star, to the Fire City. Could it be that there was something he wanted in the auction? Just as Lung Fifan was about to step toward the east gate, another figure flew over from the sky. Swish! The figure landed on the ground. It was a young man in blue robes with a long sword hanging on his waist. His long, elegant hair was as black as ink, without a trace of dust. It was Yi Chun. This guy dares to land next to Lung Fifan? He's really not afraid of death. Everyone was alarmed to find that Yi Chun had no intention of avoiding Lung Fifan. He directly landed beside the ladder, and the distance between the two was no more than 10 meters. However, Yi Chun's arrival also startled Luo Yinkong and Yuan Qing. They retreated repeatedly, increasing the distance between them. The blade chi on the ladder's body was too frightening. Even if it was released unintentionally, it was still not something they could endure. No matter how a lion tried to disguise itself, it was still a lion after all. Its aura and innate power could not be concealed. Lung Fifan was undoubtedly a lion. Interesting. I can't believe I met a blade artist who has developed his cell will to such a level. Yi Chun sized up Lung Fifan. The reason why the latter's blade chi was so frightening was because his cell will was extraordinarily powerful. Each of his cells contained a frightening blade intent. This meant that the latter's power control had already reached a higher level, far surpassing Dugaju. While Yi Chun was sizing up Lung Fifan was also sizing him up. Their gazes collided. Swish! Blinding electric sparks exploded in the air, which was a sign that the will of a gaze was affecting the environment. Shit, retreat now. The crowd felt like their souls were struck by lightning, causing them to retreat even further. They did not expect Yi Chun to be such a terrifying presence. They could not withstand the confrontation between the two. Lung Fifan unleashed a saber aura, as if he was trying to test Yi Chun's strength. The saber aura tore the air apart, as if the heavens and earth were being split in half. Yi Chun let out a smile as the vague sword aura on his body was automatically activated. At the same time, the space suddenly stopped for a moment, but it was soon concealed again. Pop! A soft sound was heard, as the space between the two became empty. You're very strong. Lung Fifan left and headed toward the east gate. Dugaju, you'll be excited if you're here. He's a blade artist who's far ahead of you. Yi Chun headed toward the east gate as well. Not long after the two left, the place they were standing before suddenly shattered into pieces. Marks of saber and sword intertwined with one another, resulting in a shocking scene. Chapter 1039. In the afternoon, Fire City's auction began. As a large-scale auction that was held once every 3 years, the auction house was packed to the brim. Everyone present was a life and death king. Those below the life and death realm didn't even have the qualifications to enter. In a VIP room in the corner, Yi Chun sat on a soft bench that he had bought with 100 yuan stones. Taking a sip of the supreme grade wine prepared by the auction house, Yi Chun thought to himself, Vermilion Bird Starfield has countless geniuses, 100 times more than Elysium. Apart from Vermilion Bird Starfield, there is still Azure Dragon Starfield, White Tiger Starfield, and Black Tortoise Starfield. That blade artist should be called Lung Fifan, ranked 7th on the Heavenly King list. He comes from White Tiger Starfield's Giant Blade Star. Yi Chun had already heard of the Heavenly King list. It was indeed a monstrous ranking. The Firebird Starfield's Graceful Prince, who had a cultivation base of 5th layer life and death realm, was only ranked 94th. And Lung Fifan was ranked 7th with a cultivation base of 4th layer life and death realm. He was a monster among monsters. Without a fight, I won't know whose battle strength is higher. Yi Chun was very clear that he was not invincible in this world. Plus, Lung Fifan's cultivation base was 1 level higher than his. Between geniuses, even the slightest bit of weakness would create an irrecoverable gap. Unlike ordinary people, Yi Chun saw an extremely frightening potential in Lung Fifan's body. This potential was like a demonic god. Once it exploded, it would definitely tear the sky and earth apart, frightening even ghosts and gods. This was also the reason why he did not dare to say that he could beat the latter for sure. On the wide auction stage, an old man in a red robe walked out. The old man's cultivation base was not weak, having reached the 3rd layer of life and death realm. Ladies and gentlemen, the Triennial Fire City auction has officially begun. Please don't make any noise, and don't leave your seats without permission. Maintain silence. The first item will now be auctioned. Without wasting any time, the red-robed elder had someone bring up the first auction item. The first auction item was a low-quality battle axe. Its entire body was crimson red, just like a soldering iron. The back of the axe was wide and flat, and the edge of the axe was as sharp as a knife. The main materials used to forge the battle axe were red copper and fire cloud stone essence. It naturally contained a powerful fire energy, and because of the size of the battle axe, it could be used for both defense and offense. The starting price was 100 source stones, and each increment must be no less than 10 source stones. In the end, this battle axe was bought by a life and death realm warrior for 260 yuan stones. The second item was a pair of extreme grade armor boots. The main material of the boots was the flying feather iron. It was not a particularly precious extreme grade metal, but with the addition of the flying feather iron, it was as light as a feather. When worn on the body, it did not take up any weight at all. Moreover, once Jin Yuan was poured into it, it would activate the flying feather iron's power, doubling the speed. It was very popular. Not long after, this pair of metal boots, containing flying feather iron, was auctioned off for 300 primordial stones. The third item was a jade letter containing a secret martial art. The starting price was 200 yuan stones, and it was sold for 500 yuan stones, landing in the hands of Short Elder. The fourth item was also a weapon, an extreme grade mid-grade spear. The starting price was 300 yuan stones, and each increment must be no less than 10. It was bought by a life and death realm warrior who specialized in using spears for 570 yuan stones. The following items all ended up with a very high price. The highest one was a full set of extreme grade armor, which reached a shocking 2,200 yuan stones. The ninth item was a Heavenly King grade treasure pill, the Tao pattern pellet. This pellet could increase the chances of breaking through to the next realm. From the first layer to the second layer, it could increase the chances by 100%. From a second layer to the third layer, it could increase the chances by 90%. From the third layer to the fourth layer, it could increase the chances by 50%. And from the fourth layer to the fifth layer, it could increase the chances by 10%. As soon as the pellet was brought out, the whole place was shocked, and the bidding voices rose one after another. 3,000 yuan stones, 3,200 yuan stones, 3,500 yuan stones, 4,000 yuan stones. Within a couple of breaths, the price of the pellet had increased to 4,000 yuan stones, which was already the price of a small king-level battleship. There is such a pellet. It was Yi Chen's first time hearing about a pellet that could increase the chances of reaching the next realm. If he could get his hands on this pellet, he might not have a 100% chance of reaching the fourth level, but he would have at least 80 to 90% chance. After all, from the third level to the fourth level, it would increase the chances by 50%, which was not something to be trifled with. However, Yi Chen also believed in one thing. Pellets were only external objects. They might be able to help you for a while, but not forever. If he guessed correctly, using the pellet to increase one's cultivation would indeed make one happy for a while, but it would definitely lead to the instability of the martial arts foundation. If one wanted to reach the next realm, the difficulty would be doubled, or even several times higher. Only those life and death realm warriors who had exhausted their potential would be interested in the pellet, because without it they might need hundreds or even thousands of years to reach the next realm. If they continued to reach the next realm, they might not be able to do it in their entire life. In that case, it would be better to use the pellet to increase their cultivation first. The pellet is a good thing, but unfortunately, we geniuses never use it. In another VIP room, Luo Yinkong said. Yuan Qing nodded. In the end, the pellet was bought by a gray-haired elder for 5,500 yuan stones. The atmosphere of the auction reached a climax, and the heated discussions continued without end. The 10th item is a Heavenly King Realm Great Blade, the Time Blade. The main material of the blade is the Time Stone. A fingernail-sized Time Stone is worth 100 yuan stones. This Time Blade has the size of half a fist. Now let the bidding begin. The starting price of the Time Blade is 6,000 yuan stones. Each increment must be no less than 100 yuan stones. Even Heavenly King Realm weapons had different grades. A normal Heavenly King Realm weapon would only be worth 3 to 5,000 yuan stones, but a good Heavenly King Realm weapon could go as high as 10,000 yuan stones. The main material of the Time Blade was the Time Stone, which was even more powerful. It was said that once a normal person touched the Time Stone, they would immediately age, and after forging the blade, they would become even scarier. 7,000 yuan stones, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. There were a lot of King Realm blade artists on the scene, and the price of the time blade instantly broke through to 10,000. 15,000. Suddenly, an emotionless cold voice was heard. It's the lifeless bladesman, Lung Fifan. So, he is here for the time blade. However, he is in the giant blade star of the White Tiger Star area, which is countless light years away from the Firebird Star. How could he know that there is a time blade here? That's simple. Recently, he must have something to do in the Vermilion Bird Star area. Then, somehow, he found out that the time blade will be auctioned in the Flamehaven City. That's right. These monster-level geniuses are mysterious and unfathomable. They like to wander around. Lung Fifan's participation caused a short silence in the auction house. The lifeless bladesman was too famous. They had to consider whether they would offend him or not, and whether it was worth it to offend the lifeless bladesman for a time blade. There were too many things to consider. 18,000 primal stones. Right at this moment, another young voice was heard. It was from the third VIP room. Hey, it's young Master Songyu. When did he come back? He disappeared for almost 10 years. Someone recognized the voice. Young Master Songyu was ranked third among the top 10 talents of the Firebird Star. However, that was 9 years ago. Ever since young Master Songyu had been defeated by Lan Xian, there had been no news of him. Some people said that he had left the Vermilion Bird Star area to train in other places. Others said that he had found a secret realm and was cultivating there. Young Master Songyu was the #1 blade artist among the younger generation of the Firebird Star area. His return had caught many people off guard and made them give up on competing for the time blade. The lifeless bladesman was not to be trifled with. Young Master Songyu was not to be trifled with either. 20,000. Lung Fifan continued to bid. 22,000. Young Master Songyu didn't flinch. 30,000. Lung Fifan didn't want to waste any more time. He immediately raised the price by 8,000 yuan stones. This price had already far exceeded the time blade's original value. Under normal circumstances, 20,000 yuan stones was the highest price it could go for. Beyond that, one could easily buy a better Heavenly King grade blade. Haha, the lifeless bladesman is indeed generous. I, young Master Songyu, will not compete with you. However, after the auction, I will have a good fight with you. I want to see if your lifeless bladesman's blade skills are truly lifeless and invincible. Young Master Songyu's laughter echoed through the entire auction house. What? Young Master Songyu wants to challenge the lifeless bladesman, Lung Fifan? Isn't that too reckless? Perhaps young Master Songyu is confident that he won't die. It looks like after disappearing for 9 years, young Master Songyu plans to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. No one had any confidence in young Master Songyu. No matter how much he had improved, it was impossible for him to defeat Lung Fifan. However, if he could make one move, it would be enough to make him famous. The auction items were presented one after another. Soon, it was time for the 20th item, which was also the finale of the auction. The 20th item is a small Heavenly King grade battleship. The starting price is 100,000 yuan stones. Each increment must be no less than 1,000 yuan stones. The bidding starts now. The puppet battleship was very important. It might not be able to increase one's battle strength, and it might not be able to protect oneself, but without it, one would not be able to travel further. In the starry sky, the distance was measured in light years. If one relied on one's own Jin Yuan to travel, one could only travel half a light year in 1 year, which was almost negligible. However, with the puppet battleship, one could easily travel thousands of light years or even tens of thousands of light years without any effort. The price kept rising and soon reached 150,000, 160,000. Yichen's voice came out of the VIP room. It's him. Luo Yinkong and Yuan Qing looked in that direction. Lung Fifan, who was stroking the time blade, couldn't help but raise his head. Chapter 1040. Whether it was Luo Yinkong, Yuan Qing, or Lung Fifan, Yichun was a mysterious person, a mysterious sword artist. No one knew where he came from, and no one knew his identity. Luo Yinkong Yuan Qing was fine, but Lung Fifan was ranked 7th on the Sky King list. Apart from a few extremely mysterious geniuses, He had seen or heard of most of them. However, none of them could be connected to Yi Chun. Clearly, Yi Chun was most likely not a genius of the Heavenly King list. However, Lung Fifan was sure that most of the geniuses on the Sky King list would be instantly killed if they ran into Yi Chun. This was an instinctive feeling that could not be doubted. 170,000. The bidder was an apathetic yellow-robed old man. His eyes were half closed, as if he was not fully awake, yet hiding an ominous glint. It's the Jingji King. He's also participating in this auction. The Jingji King was a famous king on the Firebird planet. His cultivation base was at the peak of the 5th layer of life and death realm. With his Jingji demon art, he rarely met his match. In the past countless years, the number of life and death kings who had died in his hands was uncountable. These life and death kings all died miserably, exploding from the inside out without a single drop of blood remaining. How unlucky! I originally wanted to bid for this small Sky King grade battleship. A chubby middle-aged king stood up. His expression changed several times, but in the end, he had no choice but to sit down dejectedly. Compared to the small Sky King grade battleship, his life was more important. The Jingji King was not a good person. He was a temperamental person who could not be judged with common sense. The appearance of the Jingji King caused the auction to fall into an awkward silence. The auctioneer smiled bitterly. It seemed that this small Sky King grade battleship would most likely fall into the hands of the Jingji King. Although he was unwilling, he had no other choice. Fortunately, the price had already reached 170,000, which was more or less a small profit. 180,000. In the corner of the VIP room, Yi Chun's voice came out indifferently. What boldness! He dares to go against the Jingji King. Many people looked at the VIP room where Yi Chun was, their eyes filled with admiration, as well as undetectable pity. 180,000. Good, another bid. Is there anyone who wants to continue? The auctioneer's face lit up. As long as someone increased the bid, the final price of this small Heavenly King stage battleship would definitely not be low. As for whether or not Yi Chun would attract trouble because of this, that was not something he cared about. The duty of the auction house was to ensure that every single item sold for a good price. Nothing else mattered. 190,000. At the same time, he indifferently glanced at Yi Chun, who was sitting in the corner of the room through the transparent glass. His eyes were completely open at this moment, and they were ashen white. Anyone who saw them couldn't help but feel a chill in their heart. However, Yi Chun didn't seem to notice that Jingji King was looking at him and immediately called out the price of 200,000. Young people have too big of an appetite. It's not a good thing. I'll leave this small Heavenly King warship with you for now. Jingji Monarch took a deep look at Yi Chun, closed his eyes, and stopped bidding. So courageous, snatching the small Heavenly King warship from the Jingji Monarch. Some people shook their heads inwardly. He's still too young and doesn't know when to stop. So what if he can win the small Heavenly King warship? Offending the Jingji Monarch, he's destined to lose everything, and even his life. The pugilistic world is not that easy to survive in. No one spoke again. The auctioneer said excitedly, 200,000 going once, 200,000 going twice, 200,000 going thrice. Sold! This small Heavenly King warship now belongs to VIP Room 48. Congratulations! At this point, the Fire City auction had come to a successful conclusion. However, many people knew that this was just the beginning. Before, young Master Tsang Yu had said that he wanted to challenge lifeless bladesman Lung Fifan, and now, Yi Chun had offended the Jingji Monarch. These two matters, no matter which one it was, were enough to pique their interest and curiosity. After paying 200,000 yuan stones, Yi Chun received a 100 meters long light gold Heavenly King warship. Putting it in his supreme grade storage ring, Yi Chun turned and left the auction house. In the wilderness outside the east gate of Fire City, a huge crowd was gathered. Everyone was watching Lung Fifan and young Master Tsang Yu in the sky. On a huge withered tree in the wilderness, Yi Chun lightly landed. The Jingji Monarch didn't seem to have any intention of finding trouble with him. He was also watching Lung Fifan and young Master Song Yu in the sky. He didn't care about young Master Song Yu. Lifeless Bladesman Lung Fifan was not a kind person. Even he, the Jingji monarch, had to treat him with caution. Geniuses were always envied. Even if you had thousands or even tens of thousands of years of accumulation, you might not be able to compare to dozens of years of effort. The universe was an era of great geniuses. Lung Fifan, perhaps you think that I, young Master Song Yu, am overestimating myself. But soon, I'll let you know that I, young Master Song Yu, am no longer the young Master Song Yu for 9 years ago. The current me, even if I can't threaten you, can't be underestimated. Young Master Song Yu's expression turned solemn. Strands of light black saber chi emitted from his body. Such a fierce saber chi. Many experts squinted their eyes. The light black saber chi on young Master Song Yu's body was not simple. It was not an ordinary saber chi. Make your move. I'll give you one chance. Lung Fifan had no intention of drawing his saber. Okay, then I won't hold back. Young Master Song Yu had never thought of defeating Lung Fifan. It was impossible. Lung Fifan was ranked 7th on the Sky King list. Even young Master Jinghong was far behind him. Young Master Song Yu did not dare to say that he could defeat young Master Jinghong, let alone Lung Fifan, who was ranked 80 places higher than young Master Jinghong. He wanted to test how much he had improved in the past 9 years. He wanted to know how strong he was. He wanted to know if he could survive one attack from Lung Fifan. If he could survive this attack, it would be a great boost to his saber Dao. Roar! Unexpectedly, young Master Song Yu did not draw his saber. He leaned back and tightened his muscles. The next moment, he was like a bow that had been stretched to its limit. Whoosh! 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 An ear-piercing sound was heard. A bright black saber chi shot out from young Master Song Yu's chest. As soon as this saber chi appeared, it gave everyone a great sense of danger. It was as if this saber chi was something terrifying. Saber chi in his body? Yichen was surprised. The black saber chi was not a normal saber chi. It was the saber chi that young Master Song Yu had hidden in his body. This saber chi was not condensed from true essence. Instead, it was gathered from extremely ominous aura and refined with his saber Dao will. No one knew that the reason why young Master Song Yu had disappeared for 9 years was to look for ominous lands and absorb the ominous aura there. All of this was because of a saber Dao secret technique called the ominous saber chi. The ominous saber chi was a saber Dao secret technique created by the ominous saber emperor hundreds of thousands of years ago. This saber Dao secret technique required one to absorb a large amount of ominous chi, then use a secret technique to refine it into saber chi. Finally, it would be compatible with one's own saber Dao will, and one could only succeed after countless tempering. The ominous saber chi was divided into 3 layers. The first layer was black saber chi, the second was purple saber chi, and the third was multicolored saber chi. At the first layer, the ominous saber chi possessed enormous might. At the second layer, it could instantly kill most kings under the 7th layer. At the 3rd layer, it could even contend against 8th layer life and death monarchs. After all, the ominous saber emperor himself was an 8th layer life and death monarch. Once the ominous saber chi was cultivated, a strand of saber chi would appear in the middle dantian of the body. This strand of saber chi would not go out of control after being shot out. It was extremely intelligent, similar to the defensive blade art. However, compared to the latter, the ominous saber chi was countless times more powerful. Relying on the ominous saber chi, young Master Song Yu dared to challenge lifeless bladesman Lung Fifan. Go! Under young Master Song Yu's control, the ominous saber chi streaked across the sky and slashed toward Lung Fifan. Not the righteous path. Lung Fifan stretched out his left hand and grabbed the ominous saber chi as if he was grabbing the sun and moon. Saber Dao is as vast as the ocean. Who can say who is righteous and who is devious? Scatter. Young Master Song Yu's expression remained unchanged as he spread open his right hand. Swish! Sensing each other's chi, The ominous saber chi suddenly dispersed like a black mist, breaking away from Lung Fifin's control. It then condensed once again and slashed toward Lung Fifin from the other side. The ominous saber chi could condense and disperse at will, equivalent to a treasured saber in the form of energy. However, no matter how powerful the ominous saber chi was, it couldn't break through Lung Fifin's defense. His feet slightly shifted, and his left hand once again grabbed the ominous saber chi. Almost no one could see how he moved. Scatter again. Young Master Tsangyu roared. Clang! An astonishing scene occurred. This time, the ominous saber chi unexpectedly failed to disperse. Like a poisonous snake that had its weak spot grabbed, it continuously trembled and struggled. Impossible! Young Master Tsangyu cried out involuntarily. As expected, his control over power has already reached a higher level. He has entered an unfathomable realm. Yi Chen's eyes were very sharp. Each of Lung Fifin's 5 fingers on his left hand emitted a different power. 5 fingers represented 5 different kinds of power. The 5 kinds of power acted on the ominous saber chi, making it difficult for the ominous saber chi to disperse. These 5 fingers could even easily grab a spiritual body without a physical body. It was like the Buddha's 5-finger mountain. Take a saber strike of mine. Grabbing the ominous saber chi with his left hand, Lung Fifin's right hand turned into a palm saber. He swung his palm saber at young Master Tsangyu from a distance. Puff! Young Master Tsangyu didn't even have time to react. His body was split in two. Because he was wearing a top-grade artifact armor, his body didn't scatter even though it was split in two. However, it wasn't over yet. Suddenly, millions of tiny saber chi burst out from the two halves of young Master Tsangyu's body. The saber chi wreaked havoc and shattered young Master Tsangyu into nothingness. Young Master Tsangyu didn't even have time to draw his saber. Even a palm saber strike from Lung Fifin wasn't something that young Master Tsangyu could withstand. This was the peerless bladesman ranked 7th on the Heaven King list. The spectators all took a cold breath and felt their bodies go cold.